Howdy. Ho ho, my good humans. How the hell are thy doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I'm Brandon Sylvia. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Appreciate y'all for stopping by to talk a little Dragon Age, the Veilguard. Don't exactly know how we're gonna roll this video out, if it's just gonna be a standalone Dragon Age Veilguard review. If we're gonna include it in the ranking and just stitch it all together. We'll see how long this video ends up being and kind of just go from there. Um with Veilguard coming out on the 31st and our rankings being at the very end of the month, we want to kind of talk about it while our thoughts are fresh on the game. I guess we'll go ahead and kick it off, Loon. Just letting people know our history with Dragon Age, letting people know our history with Bioware, and just kind of talking about where we are in the game. Just a quick sort of overview thoughts, and then we can kind of dive in bit by bit. So I'm gonna kick it to you first. I know you're the hardcore Dragon Age fan. I'm the casual. So how for first off, how many hours are you into Veilguard, and also dive into your history with Dragon Age as a whole a little bit?
So I think I passed like 32, 33 hours today. So it's a good chunk in. And like you said, big Dragon Age fan. So was very, I don't want to use the word worried, but they needed to get a W here for BioWare. And that's controversial if you think that they did and they didn't. It's not getting the best review coverage or user coverage either. Reception is the word I was looking for. But for me, I feel like they've done a good job. I feel like it's a good foundation, and much like you, I feel like there's many strong points, and at the same time, there's quite a lot of weak points that
Yeah.
do need addressing, and hopefully that they do that in because they've said, I don't know if you saw, they're not doing any DLC for the game,
Yeah, I love
which
that.
usually I'd be kind of be like, I'd be a little bit disappointed because some of the best content in Dragon Age games has been the DLC. I'm gonna be honest, this is the first time it feels like it's a complete package, which is so strange, not only from like a Dragon Age standpoint, but from like a AAA gaming standpoint, like to release a fully complete experience where it doesn't feel like something's been cut,
Yeah.
especially with what we've heard about like the development woes and everything. So that was that was kind of nice because then hopefully what they do now is they listen to the feedback, to the constructive feedback that's actually, what they
Yeah.
do need to improve on. And because they've all moved on to Mass Effect now, right?
Yep, the pretty much full steam ahead on Mass Effect. But before we dive any further, what are your so you've played through every Dragon Age game and finished all of them, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Finished Origins to Inquisition. I tried to 100% Inquisition and kind of failed last year. It's a big old beefy game.
Yeah. But you've played through all the stories, all the arcs, so it kind of comes together with Veilguard. You'll be able to dive in a little bit to that. And you're currently 32 hours in. Right now, you're mostly just going through, kind of taking in, breathing in the world, looking through the notes, examining, just kind of going around and investigating. Is that sort of your play style right now? Just taking it all in?
Yeah, just doing everything that the game has to offer, just reading, absorbing. Um, I don't want to rush it because look, we waited what, 10 years for this?
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna have to wait another 10 years for the next
Oh,
one
without a
at this
doubt.
rate. So yeah, snail's pace. Snail's pace.
So for me, I think I'm about 43 hours into the game. I just finished it, finished the main story. I have been doing pretty much nothing but questing, going around doing quests, faction quests and companion quests and main story quests, and kind of taking in the world as I am guided around it. Wherever they tell me to go is where I go, and whatever I see is what I see along the way. And I think it does a good job of letting you see. the majority of the world by just going from quest to quest to quest. Um, I so like I said, I just finished it this morning. I'm hot on the game, really hot on the game. I have a lot of nitpicks with it as well that we'll get into. We'll get into all of that. I should say just talking about Dragon Age fandom overall, I am definitely not as big of a fan. I'm a Mass Effect guy. I'm a big Bioware guy. Played through and finished the majority of their games. I Mass Effect 1 and 2 are probably both in my top five favorite games of all time. I'm much more of a Mass Effect guy than I am a Dragon Age guy, but I have finished Dragon Age 1 and 2. I played about 30 hours of Inquisition and just kind of got bored of it. But Veilguard, I would say right now, definitively, without a shadow of a doubt, in my personal ranking, this would be the best BioWare game since Mass Effect 2. I would comfortably say that. I like it more than Inquisition, much more than Inquisition, much more than Andromeda, obviously much more than Anthem. Um, yeah, I wouldn't put it on the
and more
same.
than Mass Effect 3 as well.
Yeah, much more than Mass Effect 3. Much more than Mass Effect 3. I probably like Inquisition more than Mass Effect 3, and I didn't even
Oh,
finish Inquisition. I wouldn't put it on a
poor
it's
Shepard.
it's not on to me it's not on a caliber of a Mass Effect 2. It's not even really close. It's not on a Jade Empire, KOTOR. It's not in that pantheon of like the greatest BioWare games of all time. But it's better than anything they have done in recent memory for over a decade, in my opinion. So, like you said, really good foundation. I definitely have some faith restored in this studio to go forward into Mass Effect. Like that's really where I'm like, oh, okay. There's things in Dragon Age where it's like, yeah, I cannot wait to see you do some shit like that in the next Mass Effect game. So, that's sort of the overview. And now we dive into the weeds, dive into the details. And I really want to let you kind of control how we weave through this since you are the bigger fan of Dragon Age. And I kind of want to get your thoughts more on it than I want to spout out mine. Really, the thing I want to talk about the most is combat, which we'll get to that later. But I want to kind of let you lead it off wherever you'd like to go.
Yeah, so when I was writing down all my thoughts, I wanted to try and keep it in I guess, as much of a like a chronological order. So when you're experiencing it in the game and stuff. So I wanted to talk about the character creator first, which I'm not sure how much you tinker in the character creator. I think you've
Not
said that
much.
you do like tiny amounts, but it was interesting to see that what was his name? Luke Stevens and stuff. I think he did a video today, like a little YouTube short, and he said it was kind of crazy that you can have somebody put a message and was like, I spent like 5 hours in the character creator. And he's like in his mind envisioning it, he doesn't tally that onto his playtime. That's separate. Whereas some people, that's part of the experience, getting enjoyment out of it. And it's a really good character creator. You got to give
It's
him
great.
credit. Like it's very extensive, and like the thing that's definitely top on that character creator is dude, the hair that they've managed to pull off is
Without a doubt.
insane. And like, don't get me wrong, we've obviously seen it's not the best hair in gaming, period.
It's close.
But it's yeah, it's very, very close. And for it to be Bioware that have done that, like their character creators have never really been anything more than decent, I'd say.
If you didn't go default shepherd, female or male in Mass Effect, you had an abomination of a human walking around in that bitch, man. It's yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I
Or
agree.
it was like an arts and crafts project. Because I have seen people pull stuff off because there's the N7 Club on Xbox, which they're like absolute fanatics for BioWare. And they have pulled off good but you're talking like 15 hours in that thing. Like you're tinkering minute and it's just like, yeah, this is so much more accessible. Um, so that's like the big thumbs up there.
Yeah, it's
Like,
because I had a buddy growing up. and he could never find hairstyles that reflected his own. Like we would play, the football games and the basketball games, and he would always have to go like a buzz cut or whatever because he's a black dude. And like in Dragon Age the Veilguard, they have, I mean, it is excellent, excellent hair for any hairstyle, any race or whatever. Like you have something that you're like, yeah, that somewhat looks like my hair. It's that shit's really impressive. And I think that there are some limitations to the body representation that it's that's annoying. A more robust woman can't necessarily create or recreate herself. And I think that is kind of silly because I don't know if they're trying to not make it as male gazy or whatever the case may be. But that's like your in some way your attempt to do that is actually removing immersion to some degree because people who actually look like that, which there are millions of women who actually look like that, can't recreate themselves. And that is silly, which
Yeah.
for me, somebody who's always going to do the exact same thing in character creators, I'm going to create somebody that looks like me, but is on every steroid known to man. I'm able to do that in Dragon Age, the Veilguard. You can go in and you have a slider where you can make your dude kind of skinny buff, fat buff, or just fucking cock diesel walking around that bitch looking like the Rock in Fast Five or whatever. I don't even know if he's in Fast Five, whatever one where he looked like a tank, which I guess he always looks like a tank. But like that's the dude I created. He's injected with all the steroids known to man, deep gravelly voice, just walking around just full of testosterone, just testosterone bleeding out of his nostrils. And yeah, that's what I create in every single character creator. But it's like I know so many women who could not create themselves in that character creator, and it's like that's kind of silly, man. If there's like some sort of okay, hey, we couldn't model our characters like that because of X, Y, and Z on a technical level, then it's like okay, I don't know about all that. But if it's just simply we don't want the male gaze, where it's like, come on, dude, yeah, that's such a dumb reason if that is the reason, which I don't know if it is.
Yeah, I don't know what their reasoning is. It's going to be an interesting next few years as to seeing why they chose, like when they do the behind the scenes stuff and, maybe some stuff comes out about him because that did surprise me because it's mimicked so heavily like Saints Row character creator where it had
It's very similar.
all the bells and whistles, but you can't go to really like high extremes and it was just like I don't know. Like, if you're gonna go that hard on a character creator, just take the take the cuffs off. Like, just let people do whatever they want to do.
What did you do with yours? Did you go warrior build or were you rogue or
So I chose this perfectly ties in. They obviously um took inspiration from Origins again in the character creator by allowing you to do your little background things. And I think it changes your surname because each background is technically a different person, I
Yep,
believe. So I chose Grey Wardens
same.
because Grey Wardens for life. You
Absolutely.
know, live hard and die young. So I went with Warrior, and I'm so glad that I did because I'll touch upon that later. That you get your other warriors don't join your party for so long. It's baffling. But
So we did the exact same thing then.
yeah.
I went warrior gray warden as well. So if I would have knew you went that route, I probably would have did something different so we could kind of compare and contrast. But regardless, we can
A
compare our
buff Dwayne the Rock Johnson mage.
right. Well, the fun thing is actually going to be when we get to combat to hear how different our experiences might have been, even picking the same exact build and class and all of that shit. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we'll get to that later. But go ahead, I cut you off.
No, I was just saying that it drew inspiration from Origins with the more background oriented thing. The only thing that they didn't bring over was the openings. In Origins, when you chose your background, it was kind of like a predetermined, this is your own 1 hour section of like tutorial that's completely separate. And I don't know, I would kind of argue that they don't need to do that anymore. I feel like it was very, very necessary in Origins because it's to its name. It's the Origin, it's the very beginning of BioWare's new fantasy thing, and it needs to show every single route. I don't know if do you feel differently about that? Do you think it would have
Uh
benefited from doing the thing? Because what I'm trying to envision as well is that for one, they don't need to do that because they've already established who these factions are in previous games, and for two, imagine how much development budget that would have cost to have what,
yeah,
six factions like that.
right.
You were able to pull that off in 2007, 2008, whenever that came out.
Yeah. Yeah, when budgets weren't through the fucking roof, yeah. Yeah, no, I think I would agree with that. I think I would agree with that. I have some complaints with just the faction system overall in the game, that we can get to in a little bit. But yeah, I like just I honestly, and I know some people are bummed out about the Inquisitor choices where you can,
Mm.
make these very, very quick, just sort of almost nothing decisions, and that will shape the Inquisitor, which was such, that's everything of the last game, and you're just kind of haphazardly throwing that into the mix at the end of your character creator. And I know people are a little bit split on that. How did you feel about that?
So I understand it, but it still hurt a bit
Yeah.
because you to do what you need to do, you have to tie it to a website, which is what they initially did, which was the Keep. That's what it was called. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it was called for Mass Effect. It was something else. I know they did like their comic book thing. They put a little bit more effort into Mass Effect than they did by Dragon Age, which they always seem to feel like they do.
Yeah.
But it did kind of feel a bit bad because obviously, especially with Inquisition, there was a lot of choice. I know you said you only did like 30 hours, but you could do so many options in Inquisition, and then to basically be like, yeah, well, it was like what, a choice or two you got to choose from basically
Yeah.
in
It
that
was
character creator.
very, very limited. It was to the point where I was like, I'm just whatever. I'm good. You do whatever you want to do, whatever you think is right. I'll go with your choice.
Yeah, and it was kind of brave, but I think they obviously have all the data because they've chosen to, some of the choices have already been pre-made for you, which I assume may have been like a 70-30 split, for instance, and they've gone, all right, we'll just go with that as like the canon moving forward and stuff. So yeah, it is a bit disappointing. Um, I did like as well when you were choosing the different backgrounds that you had unique passives and stuff. That was a nice little added touch, which I don't
Yes.
think they did in Origins to my memory. Maybe it was behind in the backgrounds. There may have been like a plus 5% thing, but it was
Right.
nice that that was shown and given to you
Well, and
from
it's
the very
really cool
beginning.
too throughout the game, like how many times being a Grey Warden actually matters in conversation. Like I thought that was so crazy that I shouldn't say so crazy. You've seen it before in other RPGs, but like I thought that was cool where it's like, yeah, your background choice does matter to some degree. And it's not like it's something that you can use in every conversation, but more often than not, if you are, if you're going around and doing some side questing and like especially if you're doing anything for the Grey Wardens in particular, your character is going to interact with them as if he is one of them, which I thought
Yeah,
is like you have to create very different arcs for these characters if you have something that's so specifically driven to one faction or the other. And I would imagine that the same thing would be true if you picked a character inside of a different faction. So I love just those little details where being able to choose those dialogue options just adds that little flavor where it's like, yeah, I'm with y'all. I come from the same roots that you guys come from.
yeah. It gets utilized very quickly, as I'm sure you remember. Like the very first like choice, as it were, you can utilize and be like, no, we'll do this as a Grey Warden, as it's blight related. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, what difficulty did you play on? Out of curiosity.
Just adventure standard.
Hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, that's what I opted with. I was looking through all of them. It was five difficulties, so really, really easy all the way up to Nightmare. I thought it was quite bold of them to be like, if you're going to play on Nightmare, that's it. We're locking that in. If you want to
Oh, they
change it,
lock
you,
you
you have to
in.
restart the playthrough. And it was like, Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Because I don't know about you, the combat is really good. There are some encounters where it's like, man, this is, especially if you're, I was going off the beaten track so
So
much.
you were
I was
under
going,
leveled.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, la 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 la, what, level 30? I'm level 12. What the hell is that?
Yes. I might know
And
exactly the enemy you're talking about because there is an enemy that's exactly level 30 and you hit the blight and they pop out of the blight. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, yeah, the
Yeah.
fucking the champions, man. You get,
Yes.
yeah.
Dude, the
And
same thing happened to me. I was level 17 and he was level 30. I actually got video. I think I have video of that. I put together an hour. I should mention that. I put together an hour compilation video of a bunch of clips that I took while playing the game. And so there were a couple things. I didn't want to put too much dialogue and too much story related stuff in there just to avoid spoilers, obviously. I put some earlier moments in there and shit that, very, very early on stuff or side stuff that people wouldn't I don't think would be too bothered by. But I think that in that hour compilation, it's probably like 52 minutes of combat. And I do believe that clip is in there where I'm just getting wrecked by that big ass motherfucker. So yeah, I think I recorded that. I hope I did. But yeah, that's the thing. You can be very underleveled in this game and have some real challenge. If you go the main path, you're going to typically be fine. Like you're not going to die a bunch. Later game, there are some moments where it's like, whew, okay, we got three of these big ass titans rushing me, and I'm really having to think and strategize, and I got to use my detonate systems. I need to make sure that I have companions with me who apply and detonate the same type of what is that called? The where like they apply
they can
Sundred and
apply
the
like
other.
sundered, yeah, sundered and weakened, and then they detonate it, stuff
Right.
like that.
And that system's actually really, really cool as well. Did you want to dive into the combat real quick, or was
We
there
can do,
another?
yeah.
Okay. Um, that's my favorite thing about the entire game is the combat. I am obsessed with the combat in Dragon Age the Veilguard. I think it's one of the few combat systems where the more you play and the more you tinker with it, the more rewarding it is. Like I
Mm,
went through and I was constantly just going back and that's the cool thing with the skill tree. You can refund all of your points, no punishment
yep.
whatsoever. And so I was constantly just going, I would refund like 20 points consecutively and just build it all to an entirely different skill tree, just min-maxing in certain directions. And man, I had tornadoes I could spawn that were sucking up enemies and doing a bunch of damage. I had attacks where I would leap into the heavens and jump down with my damn big ass axe, smashing on the enemies below me. I had attacks where it was just like I could rip the ground out from up under me. Like there was so much shit I was doing in this game because I was constantly tinkering with it. The popping up the shield as the projectiles come at you and you're deflecting them back at the enemy, setting the detonator on the shield, throwing the shield and it
Hmm.
detonates. The first ability you get, the Spartan kick, you're just
Yeah,
kicking.
it's so good.
It's
It's
so
so un
fun. You're literally drop kicking enemies off of cliffs non-stop in this game, and how the enemy positioning is laid out is so brilliant to allow for that, where they put enemies on these arenas almost constantly in position to be kicked the fuck off the map.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, the so you chose warrior as well. Did you
Yep.
end up going more of a shield or more of a the two-handed option that you tabbed with?
Constant swapping, constant
Oh,
swapping. I
damn.
I would go if I had the big enemies or if I had a bunch of enemies surrounding me. So I ended up going with a path where I could hold square and he would charge up the attack and just spin that damn axe around like nonstop. And I could charge it and hit square or charge it with square, let go. And on his like second spin, I could hit square again and he would go like full fucking 360, 540. Not the best with math, but he would go it just like these nonstop spinning motions. And like I would just spin and spin. And then I had an actual ability where he would do the same thing. So I would spin and level up my rage until I got to 2 rage points, which would allow me once again to like my dude was just in that bitch doing spinaroonies, knocking people out with his axe. But then also, um, I would if I was in any sort of battle arena with a bunch of enemies off in the distant, I'd bring out the shield because they would throw projectiles. Usually if they're off in the distance, they'll throw projectiles. So I'm popping up that shield, deflecting them back. And then I also have the charged up shield where if you charge it and if you time it perfectly on the third charge, it'll do massive amounts of damage. There are certain like smaller enemies where if I charged it up all the way, it would just completely take them out in one thing, just one shield throw. Bow, no detonator, no nothing, just one shield throw. Bow, wipe that bitch out. Man, that combat system is really fun. Like if you fuck with it, it's fun. If you want to go through and just, I've heard people say, "Yeah, I dropped the difficulty. I wasn't finding the combat system fun." It's like, well, sure, yeah, you can button mash your way through it if you drop the difficulty and you just want to do that and you just want to take in the story, which is great that they have the option. But like if you want to really get in that bitch, man, and experiment, they allow for so much experimentation, which Bioware games have always, always had. Like when Mass Effect 2 and 3 were better, but as far as like action combat, they've never been that good. Mass Effect Andromeda, I would say is the best. Maybe Anthem. I didn't play much of Anthem, but um, this is the best combat system they've ever made, in my opinion, by a mile.
Yeah, it's it kind of reminded me, I think, when I was talking about Wanted Dead and starting off with because the enemies on that base difficulty are a little bit spongy in the beginning. You have abilities, but your the ability resource doesn't build up quick enough to be constantly utilizing them like you will do in the later part of the game. So I can kind of see why people have very short attention spans and very short fuses. And if they've also been told that the game is bad and they boot it up and they're like, man, I get to like do one kick and then I'm having to wait 45, 50 seconds to be able to do something else. Like I can understand that. But it is that thing of every for the opening, say 10 hours, every couple of hours they unlock, it feels like an extra bit for the combat, an extra bit and an extra bit, and then it finally caps out, and then you've got 15 skill points that you've gone and you just it doesn't feel as spongy anymore because you're in the flow, you know what to do, and you're balancing the combat properly. Is how I felt. I'm not sure if it took you a short amount of time or if that was about the same amount of time.
Well, I think I was probably leveling up quicker because they level you up more when you're doing quests.
Mm,
So if you're doing the quest, if you're going through, because I early on I just straight main pathed it for probably the first 7, 8 hours, nothing but main path. So I was leveling up like nonstop.
yeah.
And then I would go and do faction quests and companion quests, like I said, nonstop questing. So like right now I'm at level 49,
Whew,
if I'm not
man.
mistaken. So you level up like a motherfucker when you're doing quests.
You
Um,
don't when you're reading books.
yeah, no, you
They give
don't.
you like they give you like 50 XP for that shit.
I
My
mean,
reward is knowledge.
I'm not even joking. The last few quests I did, I got 10,000 XP.
Damn.
Literally 10,000. Like they level you up like a motherfucker towards the end of that game. And so for me, and even early on in the game, I felt like I was nonstop leveling up to the point where 5 hours in, dude, I was already tinkering. I was already refunding points and going in different directions with my skill tree. Like they were leveling me up quickly in this game. And I think that's one of the things that kept me so glued in where I was like, because I immediately, whenever I got my first ability, I was looking at where, because I love that style of weaving your
Mm,
choices with your skill tree, where it's like, okay, if I go in this direction, this is what I eventually unlock. If I go in this direction, I unlock a tornado, I unlock a sky attack, I unlock pulling the ground up from up under me. Like I wanted to see which direction would get me which reward. And I'm sounding like a crackhead here. I'm just like, there's so much I want to talk about with this combat. But so immediately I found my direction I went with. And at first I was so defensive minded because I just wanted to make sure I was capable to get through the game. And so at first I went into a direction where it was like they had a perfect parry for even the red attacks. You have the yellow ones that you can always perfect parry.
yeah,
But then they have the red ones where if you unlock this far, it's on the left, I believe, the left
yeah.
side of the skill tree. If you unlock that ability, you can perfect parry every fucking attack. So I was like, bingo, that's my defensive ability that I'm going with. Um, and so I I went the one thing on the defensive side of and unless I missed something, I wish there was a perfect dodge window where it would slow down
Um,
time and kind of go Bayonetta mode for a minute. Like that shit would have been so sick since they're like leaning into the character action elements so much more just to feel that fucking window. Boom, you're out the way. It slows shit. Now, I know you can go in and I believe it is Nev, who she has the slowdown where you can use her slowdown ability in combat. But I wish it was just like they maybe if you dodged out of the way of like a heavy attack at the perfect time, it just slows down for a second as they're trying to gather themselves and you can pow 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 charge up your attack
mm,
and shit. That would have been fire.
yeah. See, me, especially in these type of games, like I've not touched the two-handed weapon at
All
all.
sp
So
all sword and shield.
the opening couple of hours. I was like, okay, I'm gonna see where I'm gonna spec into and build it off of there. Dude, you're talking about like summoning tornado. I'm just Captain America and these guys. Like you have the thing where you're able to open up by throwing the shield. It hits them, bounces back, and if you click Y again, you can go dong, dong, dong. You do that like 4 times. It does so much damage. And the raining fiery blades from the sky is so good. Disappointingly though, because I was gonna say, which specialization did you end up going into?
Well, that's the thing is I went all
Oh,
around
you went
the
all of them. Oh,
I did there might be one that I didn't do actually. I think I did all of them but one, and I might have done all of them. Does a trophy pop if you do all of them? Because I don't remember
I
seeing a trophy pop for
I
it.
don't think so.
Okay, I
I'm
might
gonna need
have
to
done
look
all
up
of
because
them.
I'm trying to think of the name. I think it's Bulwark is the one I went with.
Yeah, where you get like the more necromancy, the like you can do a bunch of the yeah, what's it called? The damage, the green damage, right?
Necrotic.
Necrotic damage, yeah.
Dragon Age, Veilguard.
That's where you get the tornado too, if I'm not mistaken.
I definitely don't have a tornado.
I could be wrong. You might get the tornado somewhere else, but um, yeah, I'm pretty sure because I'll have the gameplay rolling where people can see.
Champion, that's the one I went with, where it's fully
Okay,
defensive. And
yes,
then you have
that's the one where you get the
Reaper.
perfect parry.
Yeah. And then Reaper, I believe, is the necrotic
Yep.
one.
Oh, and
And
that
then Slayer
also
is the two-handed one.
the Reaper that has a badass ability where you get that staff or whatever, and you can send out that necrotic damage, and it comes like it you send it from the ground and it comes shattering up towards the enemy. And then if you combine that with you can so that's just a simple ability that oh, and also there is another skill chart later on where you can hold square and it does your abilities. So you don't actually have to use your rage.
Mm.
You can literally just hold square and do like a charged up overhand attack that is exactly your ability, but it's not using your rage points. So you're doing that ability. It's probably doing lesser damage than if you used your rage points, but it's that same animation. And you're
Mhm.
using that and doing a bunch of damage and leveling up your rage as you're essentially doing your ability. And then when you get your rage all the way leveled up, you have your actual abilities that you can combine with your abilities that you're holding square and charging up and doing those. Like there's some fun shit in this combat system, dude. The that spear thing where you can throw
Yeah,
it at the enemy and pull them
and
towards you.
yank them and overwhelm them. It's so damn good
Yes.
because if you perfectly when they're in there and you get the window, you can like shield bash them. I don't know if you knew that, and it
Yes.
just flops them. It's so damn good.
Dude, and like you said, you overwhelm them so they're kind of staggered for a minute. So you bring them to you and they're staggered for a second, and you bring them to you and they're right next to like a canister. They're right next to the edge of the cliff. So you dodge to the side real quick, line them up with the edge of the cliff, and then you pop out that different that drop kick ability, smash them bitches off the cliff. They go flying. Like you can experiment so much with this combat system. And there's a battle arena and you do
Mm.
10 of the fights. And
Already did that, and there's a massive pit in the middle, and that pit is so damn good.
dude, it's so fun, man. You just bink, hit that spear, drag them to you, dodge out the way, drop kick, then bitches go flying. You're finished with that shit in well, there's some pretty tough like the last two challenges are tough, but you can knock out like the first seven of them bad boys in 20 minutes, just drop kicking people into that damn hole.
Yep, and I did that exact. I did all 10 back to back. I was like, I've always said this, any arena mode is just always for me. I loved it in Greedfall and stuff like that. It's just addictive.
Yep.
So
Oblivion, all
addictive.
of it, man.
Absolutely. Um, so I do have a minor negative. I don't know if you'll agree with it, combat wise. It I wish we had more control, if that makes sense. You have a lot of control over your character, but they have stripped back your functionality with your companions. I
Yeah, I
don't
wish
know
you
if you
could.
remember with uh every Dragon Age game before that, it had the whole thing where you could tinker their AI, how they function. You
Yep.
know, if it's a little bit different because they can't die now, so you don't need to worry about managing their health, which was always a little bit annoying. Is that you had to like go in and tinker underneath the surface to be like, look, man, if you're at 20% HP, drink a damn health potion. What is wrong with you? We have enough
Right.
of these. Um, and the same with like them to use their skills. You didn't have to tell them to use the skills. They would do it on their own, or you could tell them to be a little bit more precise with it. Whereas now they don't do any. They basic attack, but they don't use any of their skills unless you tell them to. And it's because they're on such a long cooldown, like compared to the previous games. Like it feels like everything is tied to that one resource. So they use one skill, whereas before it was you could use your X skill, your Y skill, your B skill, because they were timed cooldowns. They weren't usually eating into a resource unless you were doing like a very specific class a lot of the time. So that to me is a little bit of a negative.
Yeah, I also think that like it's a problem to me where you so there's two things. It's a problem to me that you can't in Dragon Age Inquisition you could swap to play as any of those characters as well.
Yep.
And it's a problem to me where I can't go and grab a bow and start shooting people with a bow as a warrior. I can't pick up a staff and do attacks and cast spells like a mage as a warrior.
Mm.
And so if I would like to be able to swap to a mage or to a rogue while playing as a warrior, that way for my second playthrough, I can know which playstyle I would want to jump in as. You know what I mean? Because at this point, it's kind of like I'm just guessing. Like when I go back to play through the game again, I sure, I guess I'll just go rogue, or I guess I'll just go mage. And then what if 10 hours in, 5 hours in, I'm like, I wish I would have went the other direction. But if you were able to swap to those characters to play as a mage, to play as a rogue, then you'd know immediately, like, oh, I like that combat a lot. That was a bummer to me. And also the I've heard people say you don't really need to use your companion's abilities. And once again, I don't really know where that's coming from, where people are saying you can kind of button
Yeah,
mash your way through it.
I mean,
Like,
if you're playing on the easiest difficulty, I don't know. Like maybe then on that normal difficulty, no, you have to absolutely them, especially the big champion fights and shit. If you're not using your abilities and stuff, man, are they gonna drag? Like that's crazy.
yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And it's to me like I wish that you could, because it kind of becomes a thing where you're super prioritizing your primer and detonator systems, where I like that, but I kind of wish you just used abilities
Hmm.
and none of them sort of joined with one another, because it felt like I was always prioritizing primer and detonator and I wasn't experimenting enough with my other characters, standalone abilities that weren't tied to my character or a different character's primer or detonator. You know what I mean? Like the only one I really utilized nonstop was the slowdown,
Yeah.
because it was just so OP. And I was like, yeah, sure. But a lot of the other abilities, I wasn't really able to tell what they were doing, once again, because like you said, like you can't swap to these characters. You can't really get the feel for what each of these attacks are doing other than the primer and detonators. You're seeing the health just, you can knock out 50% of an enemy's health sometimes with those attacks.
Yeah, it seems a little bit restrictive. I think what if they're gonna do stuff like this in the future, they just need to do like a free tier system. Have and just get rid of the when I use one ability, the rest of their abilities should not be able to be used. That's ridiculous. Like that's really stupid. So have like a very lowish damage thing that they can spam out every say, 8 to 10 seconds. And then a primer can be the middle tier thing, and then have them have an ultimate kind of thing. That would have been perfect because then you're actually engaging with their combat instead of when you get into the combat, all you're looking at a lot of the time is the one that has the symbol on it because that's the ones that they're paired with.
Yeah.
You're not doing any of them other abilities because, yeah, they'll do damage. And the crazy thing is, you could probably have half that skill tree filled and it still wouldn't do the same amount of damage if you're detonating them. So there's no point in engaging with it.
Well, and also I think the primer detonator system is somewhat of a disappointment in terms of the character interaction through the story, because you're always going to pick Nev and Lucanus, and pick, these characters who have the primer and detonator combo to go out with one another to accompany you in these missions. And so you're not experimenting with different characters, and so much of the good dialogue is just roaming around the streets and having these two characters banter back and forth with one another. But if you're not experimenting and rotating in and out different people and different combinations of people, because you're trying to optimize those primer and detonator combos, then you're not getting enough of that variety of interaction between the companions.
Hmm. I think this ties in perfectly to move on to the companions if you wanna. Are you done with the combat?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on forever. Oh, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Destroying the blight with the turrets, so fun. So damn fun. You destroy the blight, and then a big old like hole pops up, and a bunch of enemies run through, and you're like, oh, funny enough, I'm still here with this turret thing. And you just start blasting them bitches, one hit kill. It's so fun, man. There's some fun shit in here. Fun combat. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the companions, how did you feel about the number that was given to you?
I'm fine with that. I could have done less. I could have done more. I was fine with the number that was given. I think that because you haven't really, have you dove deep into the companion questing yet?
So what I've done is I've recruited everybody because there's no more like empty picture. There's no way they're going to be like, here's an eighth. It's what it, you can tell what it's been. They give you Scout Harding, who doesn't have an affiliation to a leveling up thing, and then every other companion has a faction that they're tied to that you're leveling up. And I've gone out and gotten each of them, and I've done their very first faction quest, or the companion quest, sorry. So like, is it Davlin? Devlin? It's
Uh,
one of the two. Davrin, that was it.
Davern, yeah.
Done his like intro where he takes you around and stuff. I've not gone on further than that, so I don't know how good they get. But oh no, I haven't done the only one I haven't begun is the Necromancer guy because he's the last person I've recruited.
Emmerich.
Yeah,
And
got
what
gotta love him and his little skeleton butler.
what is Manfred, right?
Manfred.
Manfred,
Manfred.
yeah. Man, that so here's what I'll say. I think by the time you end up finishing the companions, you're going to be happy that you didn't have more.
Mm,
Um, it drags badly because, well, here's the thing. I will give you this little piece of advice that I sure wish they gave me. If they have a exclamation point above them on your map, that means that they have something important to do. If it's a bubble and an exclamation point, that means they just want to talk. So, which there's good shit in there, but I yeah, if I knew that, I would be prioritizing the actual exclamation points where I could go and do missions that would progress. Because like I spent a ridiculous amount of I finished all of the companion quests for every character. Um, had them, max leveled or whatever, max bond. And I wish that I would have knew that those little bubbles often meant nothing at all was progressing in terms of any sort of interesting story content. Sometimes, but oftentimes not. And if we would have had two, maybe even three less companions, and then just I wish it was more like Mass Effect 2 where it was okay, hey, here's three cool companion quests or whatever, a couple cool companion quests, and they're all heavy fucking hitters. And then if you want to go and interact with the characters for just simple banter, you walk up to them, talk some shit, see where it goes. Cool. Um, but yeah, I could have done with less companion quests or less companion characters, honestly. There was some filler in that.
interesting. I don't mind. It's to me, it's probably the completionist mentality. Every time I went back, I didn't mind having that like extra little discussion, even if it didn't lead to anything. It was always like a treat to come back to. Even playing like just exploring around, and Manfred was just out and about on his own. You're like, what the hell are you doing here? And he just
Yeah,
decides to play rock paper scissors with you randomly. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
that's so cool.
Um, but yeah, to put you on the spot then, because you said that you could do with less, what would be if you could cut one companion, and then who was your favorite companion?
Cut one. All right. So I guess we're getting into the Tosh stuff. Uh, I would cut that for sure. And it's I'm not the most woke person in the world. I'm not an anti-woke person. I I we've talked plenty of times behind the scenes about just random shit. I think we both kind of comfortably sit in what I would consider, and maybe I'm not normal, but I would consider us both to be pretty fair-minded normal humans. Like we're not bigots, we're not hateful, we're not this, we're not that. All the isms, I don't think most of those apply to us. But I think that we can clearly identify when it's like, holy shit, man. You are strong arming some annoying shit down our throats. And it's not even so I don't mind like Metal Gear Solid is an ultra woke game. The Last of Us is an ultra woke game. There are ultra woke video games that I fucking love. But Baldur's Gate 3, people talk about some of the greatest storytelling. in regards to gay characters, in regards to, all of these different issues. They just did not have the sauce for tackling these topics in in the Veilguard. Like it is the most teenager melodramatic, just so simple. Like there's no real big revelation that makes you think about anything. Like it didn't make me examine my perspective or belief on any of these situations, which that's the thing. That's what I really like. Whenever you're like, oh, damn, I never saw a perspective from that worldview because that's not a worldview that I have. And whenever you're giving me a different perspective, but it's like so surface level. And then that's the thing with Tosh, in my opinion. It is so surface level, man. Wait, like let's really dive into this shit. Not, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's like parent drama.
Yeah, the opening quest thing, you go and feed like pigeons and stuff, and that was fun. And the dialogue when it was just with her was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. And then at the very end, the mother comes and then just drops the. It was very. It was like, why? Why would you have said that? That doesn't like. I was stunned. It was like a stun lock. I was like, why would you? Oh, she doesn't usually go for men, and it's just like, okay, that's for you've just introduced this character.
Yeah.
Seems a little bit forward as the mother to say that and just think that that's not a normal like conversation.
And
That's
I know these aren't normal circumstances, obviously, but I think that also adds to the disconnect where it's like we're talking about the world is ending. The the world is ending. Do I think we got some serious problems to address here? And there's a point in that quest line. There a lot of that shit I could tolerate. Where it was like, okay, it's a teenager, and she is presented as such, which there is something compelling there, where it's like she is presented as this young adult trying to understand herself. Sure, we've seen it a million times, but sure, another one of those style of arcs. You don't have one of those in your companion group, so if she's fitting that role, totally fine. There's a moment at the end of her companion quest, and I won't spoil I how to dance around this. Here's what I'll say. Okay, so it's something I'll say it has something to do with a dragon king. And it's
all
a
right.
super high stakes, like gut-wrenching, heavy, heavy scenario.
Yeah.
And in the midst of this heavy, heavy scenario, she says, and it wouldn't even be Dragon King anyway. It would be Dragon Queen. I I was like,
I so my fault because I haven't delved deep into them. But the like I said, that opening it shows me that they are trying to do something, but it feels like they're trying to do it too quickly, if that makes sense. You're
right, it
trying
feels
to
like that.
get to the point very, very quick, as if this is like Mass Effect 1, where like you finish the whole of Mass Effect in like 10 to 15 hours.
Right.
Guys, you have like 60, 80 hours that you could pace this out across and build this up. And I think that's the big difference between tackling these themes in the way they've done it, where it seems very, very quick, and how Baldur's Gate did it, where it's a slow burn, where it doesn't feel and the payoff is much more like you when you're unraveling the layers of a character and you feel like you've earned to get through the barriers that they set up. That's the big difference. You think of the greats in Bioware, of like Jack, for instance. Very, very hard, cold barrier put up. But if you actually get down to her faction and stuff, she's very soft.
Yep.
very, very soft and vulnerable. And that's the difference. If it was just that she put that up and then put it down immediately, it feels a little bit rushed in that
R-
way.
Right. You're dead on. It's the layers aren't there for her character arc where they are there for some of the other characters and we'll get into. But the thing with her that's such a disappointment to me is that, or I guess them that's such a disappointment for me is that it's to me, here's the thing. If your entire identity is just like if I look at your Twitter profile and it's nonstop, Trump praise or nonstop whatever political jargon, if that is your entire identity, is I'm just this is it. Nothing but this. If you go to someone's YouTube page and it's nonstop outrage, you're like, okay, this is a very one-dimensional human being. I probably don't have any
It's
interest in consuming this content. And
it's
that's
exhausting
her arc.
in any sense though. And it's
Yeah.
not just political stuff. If because I find it like I enjoy sports, for instance. I enjoy football. I find it exhausting to be around people who live and breathe that 24/7, if that's the
Right.
only thing. And it's just like there's nothing against that person. You're passionate about it, that's great, but I can't have that be there constantly like that. It doesn't have that hook on me, and it doesn't have that appeal and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
I hate
I think yeah, they like you said, it's just it was lacking layers and maybe take a crack at it next time and just be a little bit more yeah, better. That's the only like just be better at approaching the subject.
would
Like
just be more nuanced,
yeah,
just have a story where that is a compelling part of a character and not the entirety of a character. Because if you look at all those other characters, Nev's arc isn't dependent on her being a woman. Emmerich's arc isn't dependent upon him being a man. None of their arcs are dependent on their sexuality or their gender or they're actual compelling characters, and then their gender, sexuality, or whatever that might play a part of their character. If it's the entirety of a character arc, it's like, okay, I
there
sure.
there there needs to be more. And I think they thought that adding like the fire breath spice and that little bit of a thing was enough. I think it's just I'd like to know who was the writer to see what their previous work is and stuff like that, and just be like, because I want to. It's not to throw hate their way, because
No.
that's never going to help them improve. If every writer wrote a story and then it was fucking torn to shreds the moment it was published, you wouldn't have any writers in the world.
Yeah.
You need to
Dude,
be like, okay, I see what you were doing here, and it's good that you're going to try and approach this topic, but maybe look at stuff like Judy in Cyberpunk, where she has a massive thing of sexuality. You can't even romance her as a
if
guy.
you're yep,
So that
100%.
it's a role playing game. They remove that choice from you though, because the way they've written it, and they stuck by it. Something like that. Look at how that is wrote and why she is such a compelling character.
And that's maybe 10% of her story.
Hmm.
If that, it might 1% realistically. Like her, she has a fully fleshed out character arc. And I think that's once again another issue with having as many companions as you do is the time isn't there to flesh those characters out. It could be like you said, you have 80 hours, 100 hours, you have infinity hours, however many hours you want to put into it is how many hours you have. But her her character in particular just feels so like it feels like there needs to be 4 hours of introduction there added and a couple hours of conclusion added to really give that character the layers that some of these other characters have where like so you said which character would I cut, which character would be my favorite. um so obviously I think Tosh has the worst character arc by a mile of the companions in its entirety when you see it all the way through. I think that the best of those stories would probably have to go to Lucanus. Probably Lucanus, I would say. Balara has a good one. Balara has like a lot of puzzle centric missions that you'll go off and do with her that are really fun. I would
And
say
that's perfect. Sorry to quickly interrupt. That's perfect. That's so well constructed by I haven't done them yet, but I had to dive in there. Her brain is so scattered 90% of the time. That's so thematic that the only thing when she's actually directly focused is puzzles, when she's trying to figure out a problem. So tying that, and that's a great way of handling a companion quest, is
totally.
tying that all together.
Yeah, and the thing about not to keep going back to Tosh, but she has some badass boss fights in
Mm.
her companion quest that like once again like it would make people want to uh play as her if the story or play with her as a companion if the story was better. Darwin has some really good shit. I love Asan, the
Mm.
dog bird thing that accompanies him. What is the name of that creature? Do you know the specific?
Griffin.
Is it? Oh, okay. So yeah.
So
Oh, because
well,
there's the whole
I'll quickly dive into that. When we were talking about removing choice and stuff, when in Inquisition, one of the choices that you found was the Grey Wardens used to use Griffins as
right.
their aerial cavalry in the Blight, and obviously, if they get blighted, they also die. The war took its toll, and they were gradually thinning them out, and people thought they went extinct in the end.
Yeah.
And in Inquisition, you find a nest of griffin eggs that have basically been suspended in time, and you can choose what to do with them. So they've basically made the choice for you. You gave them to the Grey Wardens, and they've trained them up and everything, and that's it's awesome to have that back. So so damn cool because it
Oh,
was one of the coolest things in the series when you're reading the books and hearing about it and stuff. And then it's like, wow, you kind of remove that. That's kind of crappy. Like it's impactful, yeah, from a storytelling perspective, but that sounds so badass. Like imagine if they did, because we're due another big blight, guys. Come on, like Origins. Imagine that opening. If they went full-fledged budget and they were like, all right, you choose the Grey Warden opening, dude. Clouds come over. You're fucking riding a griffin from the sky and swooping down and like monster huntering like some big ass dragon. That would be so damn good.
Loon.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I I all right. I fuck man, I want to say something, but I don't want to say nothing. It
Oh, we. I think I can kind of get that. I think I've called it.
you don't get to ride them.
Oh,
No, I
son, my
so it's
boy,
like that's the
son,
thing. It's
my
like
boy.
I don't want to oversell it, and I don't want to under like all right.
I
So
mean, he's gonna have a massive story impact.
yes, Asan
Yeah.
definitely does. And whenever you were speaking about the Grey Warden thing, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, because the Grey Warden and the whole that that all is a big part of the finale of that faction quest. I will say they allude to riding the Griffin, and I don't know, you know. I don't know if they would put that in the game, that bit of dialogue in the game so specifically if they weren't planning for something in the future. Who knows? But I will say, regardless, his that whole faction quest with both of them is fantastic. Nev, uh, it's okay. It's a lot of like Witcher-esque investigation that's
Mm,
going on. And then she's sort of the overseer of Docktown, correct?
yeah.
That's yeah. She's like the overseer, the protector of Docktown, and it's okay. It's okay. There's some fun like murder mystery investigate. That's the cool thing. Balara, a lot of puzzle solving, some fun platforming, some fun exploration. Platforming's like surprisingly good in this as well.
Mm.
Just like a good action adventure game somehow, which is fucking crazy.
The
Movement
the
feels great.
craziness of what you can do with a fucking mantle when you jump. I
Right.
don't know how much it would drive you insane in Inquisition. It was like, oh, they added a jump. That's amazing. And then you jump, and then you just slide down, and then jump, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, you're meant to be the Inquisitor, my man. Fucking use your arms to proc yourself up.
Well, and it's
Jesus
crazy, like
Christ.
you're going and sliding down something Jedi Survivor style, sliding down this slope. You hop out, last minute enemies are coming at you, and in midair, you Captain America fucking boomerang that shield out. Like, anyways, we're going back to combat. Got to get off combat. Um, so yeah, I think a good thing about the companion quests is that they allow for each companion to offer something different. Balara, puzzle solving, platforming. Nev, exploration, mystery, investigation. It's a Imric is uh much more story centric across the board, where you only have a couple missions with him where you fight anything. It's a lot of like slow plotting and digging into his psyche, and it's a much slower companion quest that has an excellent conclusion. So, anyways, my favorite of the companions would probably be, so I romance Nev. So I guess I would have to default to her as my favorite, but in terms of the questing, I would probably say I'd probably say Lucanus. I think he has the coolest shit that you see in the game.
Yeah, he definitely has, from obviously me doing each opening, his potential is probably the strongest from the very beginning. As we know, like demons and Dragon Age and stuff have such usually the stronger plot points in the games and stuff like that, and they're possessing people and how much importance they have. So to have him have one inside of him and screwing with it, it's kind of like a Venom thing where he is
Yeah.
constantly battling him. It's his other side, and it's just like, and it's even causing him physical harm when it doesn't agree with him and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I can't
And
wait to
that's
dive deeper into that.
that's the entirety of that companion quest, and it's constantly dark. You see some shit in his quest line that's like the coolest from a visual standpoint of anything you see in the entire game. Um, yeah. So who would you say right now, favorite, least favorite?
Um, I think I'm gonna shock you here. I My least favorite right now is Harding. I don't think that they're utilizing her, and they haven't really given her all that much in the opening. Um, and she's a returning character, but it's not somebody that I was like when they announced that that was who they're pulling over from Inquisition. It was like I don't really care. Like she wasn't really all that interesting. She was just the scout. You would meet her at like the beginning of every zone, and she'd be like, "Yeah, here's your quests." It'd be like adding Preston Garvey as the next guy in Fallout, the guy that just handed you quests. And it's like, she has a cool little like opening story
Yeah.
thing, which I'm hoping that they touch on because that does have really interesting thing. Because dwarves aren't meant to be able to use magic, full stop. Like they're meant to be not able to do any of that stuff. So all of a sudden, that being kind of turned upside down in a manner, I hope that they address. I also hope as well, and I don't want you to tell me this, and I'm just going to voice this into the ether. If I get to the end of this game and we've not visited the deep roads, that's criminal. You cannot finish a Dragon Age game and not visit the deep roads, especially with her doing this. Like, if they've wrapped up that quest and you don't go to the deep roads, that is unforgivable. That would knock an entire point off for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think she
Um,
would be my weakest. Did you want to add anything to that?
no, no, I'm not gonna say nothing about any of that. I would add to that though, I agree that she has a pretty weak companion arc in general. Um, I kind of get I like her as a character, and I feel like I give her a pass for that. But the actual writing surrounding her character in this game and the companion quests with her in this game, I don't love. But her inclusion in the main story for the choices I made, it made me have an extra layer of attachment to her. Um,
which is what I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping that they tie her together because they start her off as being very attached to Varric, and then nothing, like in them 30 hours that I've since to pass that moment, they've not interacted with one another. And it's just that's very, very strange, especially with what happened.
yeah,
And she just doesn't, it's just like, okay, that's very weird. That's what I mean. Like some of the interactions, it doesn't feel natural the way that they pan characters in on scenes as well.
yeah,
Because there's a scene where you're sitting talking to Varric and she comes in with a thing and she doesn't even acknowledge him. Like if you were trying to write a human story, she would come in knowing what happened to him and be like, I hope you're okay. Like you'd open that. You wouldn't just be like, hey Rook, we gotta go here. Alrighty. It's very bizarre writing style.
yeah. They address some of that uh later in the game. But I agree that I don't think Harding has near as interesting of quests to follow along with as any of the other companions. And I think also Darwin, he has some really cool shit in terms of that darker. It's a weird thing where like I don't Lucanus and Darwin, they have darker quest lines, and then that's kind of well, Emmerich has just some undead themes there, but it's still mostly jovial and lighthearted to a certain degree. But that's really where pretty much all of the darker storytelling lies, is with the with Darwin and with Lucanus, their companion quests. Actually, no, that's not true. That's not true. What the fuck am I saying? That's not true at all. The main story gets super dark. There's some murder mystery shit going on with Nev. There's some good dark elements in the game. It's one of those things where like I think to Final Fantasy, and it's way darker and more serious than like Final Fantasy 7. And then it's not quite as dark as like a Final Fantasy 16, in my opinion. It's like somewhere in the middle. There's enough jovial to
Which
lean into
is
the lighthearted and enough dark to lean into the dark shit whenever needed.
which I mean, let's be honest, that's kind of where BioWare's always landed, right?
Yeah.
Like other than Mass Effect 2's ending mission, where if you could really screw that up, but you kind of had to go out of your way to screw that up by being like, yeah, I don't want to go with any of the companions and do any of their quests, and I'm going to choose every wrong option at the end. Like, yeah, you could do that, but like you're talking like Mass Effect 3, like the end of the world, and you got Shepard doing like the little boogie on the dance floor and stuff like that, and it's just like, yeah, all right. It's always kind of had that more light-hearted tone, but they do sprinkle in each of the games and in this game. Like even me, very early on, there's been maybe 3 or 4 instances where it's like, holy shit, that's it's pretty dark. So yeah, it definitely does have dark moments.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about choices at all, or and like dive more into the story, or was there other things you wanted to hit on with the companions?
Um, Let me just quickly scroll through. Ooh, yeah, it ties in. It ties in. It ties in to the companions as well. Oh, wait, one more thing. Sorry. It also ties into what I brought up before with limiting it to 2 companions. I don't like that.
In battle?
Not even just from the combat perspective, it eliminates the piggy in the middle when you're out in the world bantering. So every single Dragon Age game, it's always been a 4-person party, and now they've gone with a 3-person, you and 2 others. And I'm thinking back to like Inquisition, where you're walking around in the hinterlands and stuff, and you have Cassandra, and you have Varric, and then you have whoever that third person is. And Cassandra will talk to that third person. And it's in Varric's nature to just, he always has got a prodder. He's always got to say something. Like they could be having any conversation. He will chime in with something and it will annoy her. And that's what I mean. That kind of thing where I don't like the banter in this game as much as the other ones because it's an A-B banter, if that makes sense. It's going from one character to the other, and that is it. It's just that. There's no third party, and because Rook never really chimes in, he sometimes does, but a lot of the time it's just he remains silent, they say their piece. And I think you kind of need that third catalyst to kind of spice things up because it makes it so much more interesting. Because there's hardly any like disagreement and stuff. It's just I tell you this and they go, okay, and that is the end of it. Which I didn't really care for as much in previous games. As
And
in previous games, I mean.
I think it also adds to it where you can't really be a dick in Veilguard. Um, that bothers me. Like I would like to have choice where there are situations where it's like I would like to respond differently than the three options that are presented. And it feels like almost always in BioWare games, at least for me personally, they were able to calibrate what a natural response would be on the full spectrum of responses. Where it's like, here's a middle tier response where you're kind of indifferent, or here's a funny response, or here's a the fuck are you talking about response, or here's a wholesome, wholehearted, like endearing response. Like it seems like they ran that spectrum better in other games.
Yeah, it's as much as we love Mass Effect,
Yeah, Mass
um,
Effect's the culprit.
it's the culprit of really screwing that up because of your patented dialogue wheel
Yeah.
that you chose to implement in it was even in Anthem for Christ's sake, like to a degree. Like
But not to cut you off, here's the thing that bothers me though, is even in Mass Effect with those limited options, it seemed like they ran the spectrum better, in my opinion, where Shepard could be a fucking dickhead.
yeah, it was it was a thing where that was the backbone, wasn't it, of Mass Effect? Renegade and Paragon.
True, that's
That's the
true.
big difference as to what's missing here. And because in Origins it was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like the list of options, as in like a normal like CRPG kind of thing where it gives you more than like three, four options.
Man.
And that allowed so much more variety, flexibility in the writing and how they wanted to approach it because you could be whatever you wanted for the most part. Then we obviously had the success of Mass Effect, and when they brought it into Dragon Age 2, they kind of adopted that a lot, where it was the Renegade Paragon thing, but they brought that over. So it still kind of worked. And the reason I think they were so good at dressing it up and why it didn't bother as many people at that time is because Hawk was, it's not like Origins where you had this as an option.
He's a
So
character.
much of his story is already foundation
Yeah.
and set in stone. So you can kind of write a perfect piece for him because they even restricted what race you could be, which annoyed a lot of people, I remember. It was only
Yeah.
human. That was it. And all you could do was choose your class. So that's when you started to see the cracks begin to show because they gave you choice in Inquisition, but it also felt a bit off. I don't know if you felt that way.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah.
it didn't feel like any other game before it in any way. It felt like it was trying to do 50 of this and 50 of that, and it didn't excel at anything.
I could see that. I still do think that the choice that from what I remember was much more varied
Mm.
than the choice in Veilguard, and I think I would
Oh, absolutely.
prefer. But here's the thing, Loon, is that the trade-off. Is it that okay, hey, you want that choice and all that depth with dialogue? Well, fuck, you ain't throwing a damn shield like Captain America anymore. Like what is this?
Uh,
Where's the trade-off?
I
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think what it was is that they went back to the drawing board because you see. there's a bit of everything in this game, from every single Dragon Age game and even Mass Effect. You're seeing these origin backgrounds that are very reminiscent of Origins. You're seeing the kind of a lot of your characters are already set in stone in many ways as well. Once you've locked in that origin, there's not as much flexibility. So you're seeing the Dragon Age 2 inspiration there. I think they just it's that thing where it's like this is the new we need to look at it as the fresh slate. This isn't Bioware of old. This is them trying to find their footing. It's almost like a new company, almost. How you should
Yeah.
be viewing it more than anything. They're trying to find what makes them tick. And choices right now is not as good as previous Bioware games. That's just the fact.
I
Like
would
they
say the
give you
worst
choice.
ever.
Yeah, I mean Andromeda had some pretty lackluster choices. In all honesty, it
Andromeda had a
they didn't
lackluster story, but choice wise, I think still a little bit more flexible.
maybe I'm still very let down by Andromeda.
Right.
Um, they were holding out hope for DLC to fix that game, and it never went through, unfortunately. So the reason I'm giving it a little bit more of a pass, this is so much more of a stronger day one release than Andromeda.
Oh my God.
Andromeda, like, it didn't function, um, and it still felt messy, whereas this functions and it just has flaws. That's the difference to me.
Loon, I was purposefully trying to break this game at times just to see how it would respond. And one time I actually did end up like getting to a spot where the game should have broke. I got to a spot in this world where I should not have been. And it just reset me back to the last point I was at. Like 2 second reset. Boom. I respawned back where I should have been. I was like, y'all accounted for that? Y'all accounted for me to get into this little crevice that I definitely should not be in? Okay. Throughout my entire time playing this game, never did a frame rate stutter. Never did.
Yeah, I'm not. So many people are complaining about that. The
Really?
performance, I've seen quite a few, and I'm very like, you have to be playing on PC, and you have to be
Oh,
playing on like older hardware. Like, there's no way you're playing this on, or because this is, I mean, make sure I'm not talking out my ass. Yeah, it's a Series X only title. It's not a PS4 and Xbox One title.
no.
So it's run flawlessly. I've not had any crashes. I've not had any frame drops. I've not had any nothing. Like it's been flawless.
And you're playing on Series X, I'm playing on PS5. We're playing on two different platforms with the same experience. It's Steam Deck verified. I've heard that people are playing on Steam Deck and having an excellent time there. Um, this is a, dare I say, the best launch of an RPG in recent memory. Like in terms of performance, I can't think of a game bigger than this doing as much as this and running as well as this in the last 10 years.
Um, maybe, yeah, maybe.
It's up there
The
at
ben
least.
Yeah, no, it's definitely up there and deserves a nod because I was thinking like all the people would be like Baldur's Gate 3, but the thing that people need to keep in mind about Baldur's Gate 3 as well
The third act.
is no. I was talking about like the opening, like the performance and stability and stuff. Is that the reason that they were able to polish as well the opening of that is because you released it in early access. This is what people need to remember. Like
Right.
when you heap praise on that, you need to remember that it had one of the most abnormal development cycles for what is essentially a AAA game. No other AAA game has that kind of development cycle. The Witcher 3, when it launched, had fucking awful performance issues, which people seem to have just forgotten. And it seems like we're getting to that point where they've forgotten about Cyberpunk because of its 2.0 resurgence. Like you people are so quick to forget. Is this going to be the same thing with Veilguard then, with all the controversy? In 2 years' time, is this going to be like,
Oh, of
man, why
course.
didn't that sell so well? What was wrong with that? It's such a good entry for the series.
Well, that's the
Yeah, it
thing,
has some
Loon,
bad writing.
is in 2 years, everybody's going to go, oh, best-selling BioWare game ever? Huh. Maybe this is good. Like I I don't want to get into it because Lord knows that I don't yeah, we'll just avoid the whole
We'll
sales
we'll
controversy.
yeah, we'll jump over that landmine.
I mean, that's batshit to me that like we're distorting reality at this point. Like we're just straight up like lying about reality. Oh, hey, this game didn't do Elden Ring numbers. It didn't do Hogwarts numbers. It's a flop.
Well,
Those
I'll
are the
take
best-selling games of all time.
I'll take the brunt here because I gave you the picture, didn't I? So I'll quickly just be very brief with this. For people that were saying about it launching on Steam and only hitting like 84,000 in its peak, The Witcher 3, its all-time peak was 103,000. That's within touching distance.
Witcher,
Metaphors,
before you go on, Witcher 3 sold 65 million copies.
yep. Metaphor 85,000. So that's I mean, so close of a toss-up, but that's one of my game of the years. And it's only 1,000 away from that. It's done more than
Well,
Red Dead 2.
Dragon Age is at 90,000. It was at 89,000.
Okay, well, this is
So,
the picture I'm
right.
pulling off is before, so it has surpassed then Metaphor. It surpassed Ghost of Tsushima.
Hold on. I'm sorry to keep doing this. Uh, Metaphor was Atlas's fastest selling game of all time.
Red Dead 2. Does that really need to be
Didn't
nailed
launch day
home?
one. Didn't launch day one on PC, but yeah, still, regardless,
Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, Jedi, Survivor,
that was a day one launch on Steam.
Odyssey, Fallout New Vegas, Persona 5, Final Fantasy 16, Batman Arkham Knight, and then Nier Automata. So
He,
a wide array of not only titles of different like takes on the genre, but like these are all critically acclaimed games. Like these are all to most people are either in that 8 out of 10 or above.
well, they're not only critically acclaimed games, they're commercial smash hits. Like, and I guess that's why people were upset with me when I said it's a huge hit,
Mm.
is that they start comparing to other huge hits to make the point that Dragon Age isn't a huge hit. And I'm like, I never said it's as big as Black Myth
Yeah,
Wukong or
it's not gonna beat a Wukong, it's not gonna beat a Baldur's Gate because these are what people need to remember is that people get so fixated on them numbers because they get shoved down the throat of them when they're on the internet and stuff when they see Baldur's Gate sell, game of the year and everything. You need to remember that how many hundreds of titles release every year, just because they don't reach that ceiling, that doesn't mean that they're bad games. That doesn't mean that they can't be deemed as successes either. Having that mindset of saying it's not a success, you're having the same mindset as the CEOs of the companies that you hate.
yeah, it
Just keep
sounded
that
like
in
Square
mind.
Enix.
Exactly. Just keep that in mind that when you're thinking about that and being like, oh, well, that's not a success, that's the mentality that they have because they're looking at it like, oh, well, then that should have sold. Why aren't you making Fortnite money? Why aren't you making Fortnite money on this, on this, and this? Just don't have that mindset, man. Like,
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I hate to keep on down this track because it's like it's never ending, but the the entire point of what I was saying was it's the biggest BioWare game ever. It launched. It's I'll go ahead and say this, like I egg on my face if I'm wrong. This is gonna quickly become the best-selling BioWare game ever. Like
yes.
they've never had a strong they just started well they put their games on Steam way back in the day with like Mass Effect and shit, but the audience wasn't there on Steam. It was, those were more Xbox centric games for the longest time. And then as the audience grew and grew, years and years and years later, Steam has probably as many people using Steam as an Xbox now.
Mhm.
And so there is a just obvious factor in the okay, Dragon Age Inquisition sold 10 million copies. Silent Hill 2 in 1 week sold over 1 million copies. Silent Hill 2 had less than Dragon Age the Veilguard had three or four times the concurrent players at the peak of Silent Hill 2. And these numbers don't even matter. Concurrent players don't even matter for single player games. But let's just assume, going off of these stats, three times, let's just say three times more players at peak concurrent. Then would that mean that Dragon Age the Veilguard sold 3 million copies week one? And if the absolute max that a Dragon Age game has ever sold and the absolute max that a Bioware game has ever sold is 12 million copies, 3 million in 1 week, you don't think it's gonna get to 12 million in its lifetime? Like it's just,
It's
it doesn't
it's
make
why
sense.
it's why when you get down to the, like you said, you can't for single player games, concurrent players is meaningless as well, because you can't begin making math off of that
No.
kind of stuff because it's so different to a multiplayer where that it really does matter. Like a multiplayer game lives and dies off of its player base constantly being there. There's going to be people that put the game down because they didn't enjoy it. There's going to be people who finished it. That's the thing. Single player games have endings. They're
Right.
not live service. You will eventually get to an end point and move on to something else. And the thing I wanted to also mention is you're going to see this constantly happen. Records are going to get constantly broken because gaming year on year gets bigger and bigger. It's inevitable that even if Veilguard isn't perceived as a better game as Inquisition, there's so many more people gaming now that if they enjoyed Inquisition when they finally did touch it, they're gonna buy Veilguard, and you're gonna have a whole new wave of people that are gonna buy Veilguard because you
I,
see this all the time of more and more sales, more and more sales.
I don't know though. I think that that definitely held a lot of weight, like end of PS4 into early PS5, but this is only on current gen systems. This isn't available on the PlayStation 4 with 100 million users on it. This isn't
Hmm.
available on an Xbox. Like that's the thing as well, where Dragon Age Inquisition
Do you know
launched
what?
in
Yeah,
it
I
launched
didn't I
in
didn't take that into consideration even.
yeah, it launched in 2014. It had over fucking 10 years to sell 12 million copies. Like I don't
That's both platforms combined as well, one would
that's
assume. Because
every
it released
platform.
on, yeah, it released on 360 and the next gens.
Right. I didn't even
So it
think about
double dipped.
that.
Yeah, it double dipped. Day one as well.
Dude, yeah, it really is annoying. Like, cause I I report on shit factually. Like, I of course I'm biased. Like, I love Bioware. I want Bioware to continue going on. But like, if this game was a flop, I wouldn't fucking. I would tell you it. I would tell people it's a flop. You know what I mean? Like, there.
It's the thing where you're in that corner of the internet enough to see the trends that happen time and time again, the numbers that pop up, and you're like, you can make an educated guess.
I track this shit nonstop.
Exactly. So when you see a number like that, you're like, well, that's probably going to end up being a success. It's very unlikely that you see something garner them numbers and then hit its ceiling at the end of the week. Like
Right.
it doesn't happen.
Well, here's the thing, and people, well, the conversation that I really appreciated, and I guess we're talking about fucking sales in this review, which I'm sorry, we'll just dive into everything. Fuck it. But the thing that I appreciated in that conversation that was, man, that was a toxic fucking conversation. And I guess I should allude to or talk about what I'm alluding to. The video where I made where I said Dragon Age is a huge hit. And then a few days ago of recording this, and it got a lot of, man, a lot of vile comments, and it was really surprising to me. A lot of the people aren't subscribers, so they don't, I guess, don't know my personality. And just thought I'm shilling or something, like I'm getting paid by EA and I have 1,000 subscribers on my EA would never pay me to talk about fucking anything. They have a way higher people on the totem pole that they could go to, and then, you know,
Well, to hammer that home even more, they hit you with a copyright strike. They,
right,
they, they're not your friend.
dude.
So,
Me and Loon, we just put out, or we just recorded a video going over our game of the years from 20, or ranking the Game Awards game of the years from 2003 to 2023. And I put up a trailer for Dragon Age Inquisition. I got a damn copyright strike on it. So it's like, what the fuck, man? No, nobody's chilling here. I could promise you that. not shilling for fucking EA or BioWare. But regardless of all that, um, a comment that I did appreciate that I got in that video was people talking about the development time and the budget. And then there's where you can that's where you can say huge hit. What? To me. Because then I honestly I didn't really, if I'm just being totally real, I didn't think about that when I made the video. I didn't think about I was just looking at, oh damn, this is going to be the best selling BioWare game ever, most likely. And I was like, that makes it a huge hit. But when you think about something like a Suicide Squad, which probably took somewhere around the same time to develop, maybe somewhere around the same budget, it is
Yeah.
hard to fucking recoup that. And that's a reality that I wish I would have considered before making the video. At least I should have brought it up.
Yeah. It's it's unfortunately the thing that BioWare has struggled with is Andromeda had a really bad development cycle to the point where it was like you guys they did the Obsidian thing where they're out of control. Like they scrapped the whole project. Like because they were so fixated on they did this the only way to describe it, they did the Obsidian thing by focusing on one thing and then looking up and being like, wow, 3 years ago? Hmm. Should have probably done other stuff with that. But yeah, that's why because I mentioned about with that as well, we need to just be patient. See where these first week sales land, and that will give you a rough indication on whether or not they are actually in trouble. The thing that annoyed me the most is that you can have them opinions and them points of views. Dude, it's 24, 48 hours after the game's launched.
Right.
Like, some people work. Some people don't live and breathe gaming. Some people have to wait until the weekend to buy something. Some people have to wait to the end of the month to buy something. Like, people are on different budgets, man.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to keep that in mind. So,
Some people are going to wait for a sale and pick up Dragon Age the Veilguard at $20 like they did Inquisition.
exactly, it's what? When's Black Friday? It's
A month. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming up. A lot of people, especially in the US, where it's a massive thing that people track and look forward to each year, that's most likely when you're going to get these games shifting copies. And it's
And
it's launched so close to that that some people probably would just hold off who
right.
aren't addicted like us, where we're like, no, we can't wait, we need it now.
It's I think we also do have to factor in EA's involvement in this and how much do they look at themselves in the mirror for this taking fucking 10 years to get out the door because you're trying to force multiplayer into a BioWare game again and trying to do it with Dragon Age. Like, and having to go back from the roots of this project, pulling roots to reorganize and retool and refigure what this is going to be. Yeah, EA deserves some criticism in that as well. And suits and executives never look themselves in the mirror and go, I kind of fucked the budget up on that one for making this team have to rescrap this project and start from the beginning. Um, but yeah, does Dragon Age the Veilguard take 10 years to develop if it was from 2015, you know, always intended to be what the game is now? No.
No,
And then that
no.
that drops the budget by probably a good 100 million.
Yeah, it definitely like they really need to get back on track and get this shit under control. Like Respawn's doing so well, and it shows. Just let them do what they want to do. Like, why stop trying to get involved and they will make you money? It's as simple as that. The same with Warner Brothers. Let them get on with what they're doing, and oh look, they're breaking records. So yeah,
I'm gonna grab a water real quick. I want to hop back into choice and consequence for a
yeah, yeah,
second,
yeah.
and
Yep.
then we'll dive into the rest of the stuff. I'm gonna grab a water real quick. All right, guys. So we're back. We are going to hop back into talking about the choice and all that briefly, real quick here. Everything will be time stamped or time stamped to some degree. I know it's a lot of rambling going this way and that way. We're trying to do our best to stay on some sort of track, but any unscripted conversation kind of veers in a bunch of different directions, kind of like a skill tree when you respec it. That I could keep on talking about that. But anyway, so let's talk about some choice and consequence.
Yeah, many people seem to be under the impression that there is no choice, and that is completely wrong. You
Oh
you do get
yeah.
choice. Um, I was actually surprised because you get the minor choice in the beginning when you first go to that village, um, and that was kind of like a throwaway choice. And I will say I'm a little bit disappointed that there's not been as many of that in my time. Maybe it's because I'm exploring. Maybe I'm the problem. I'm this deep in, and I'm actively avoiding a lot of quests. But I was hoping that some of the quests that I had dived into would have a little bit more choice at the end of them, but they don't seem to be doing that. So they seem to be saving that for the main story. But they give you one really impactful choice pretty early on when you get about half of your team, if I'm not mistaken, and then they basically have you choose between two cities. Both of them are in the same crisis because it's, the story you've bitten off more than you can chew. You've poked the hornet's nest. Now they're coming at you, and you have to choose. And what was crazy about that is not only that they, for one, give you that choice so early. The second is each location has a companion tied to it. So you have one companion saying, please help me, and another companion saying, please help me. And they had the balls to be like, okay, you side with this companion. This companion just fucked off. Like they are genuinely upset with you not choosing their thing. And they turn around and go, well, okay, I am going to go and fix it then. I'm going to go defend it and I'll do it on my own. And they're removed from your party for a period of time. And that would have been good enough. Like that's impactful enough. But then they give them the passive, which I'm sure you saw, where it disables their support skills.
Yep.
They they have written in a way, and it's so simple, and it's why I don't want to like absolutely heap praise onto it. But it's a good addition of they it shows that they don't trust you as much. They don't trust the group, so they're not going to heal you. But it gives you so that's a negative, but they also give you a positive because they're angry, their damage increases. So that was like a really cool moment.
And it's cool too that the world, whenever you go back and visit, depending on who you choose, whichever world or whichever location you didn't choose, there's going to be like quest lines that reflect the fact that you didn't choose to help them, and you have to go and repair a little bit more. And the faction that you didn't choose to align with is weakened a little bit by you not deciding to go and side with them, and you're having to repair not only the trust that you lost from either companion that you didn't side with, but also the faction that you didn't side with. So there's like immediate real consequence to those choices. And also I'm not going to talk about real story shit like the end or anything, but Mass Effect 2. I'll just say that. It's you have Mass Effect 2 moments in this game that your choices are they happen quick and matter immediately. And yeah, good shit towards the end of the game. However, was there anything else you wanted to dive into there?
One more little, because I forgot to add it, is not only when you whatever city you don't choose, it's not only that it affects the faction and adds quests visually, it
Right.
changes. That city gets fucked up big time. Like you chose the opposite city to me. So when I went back to that faction, there is dead bodies everywhere. The enemy factions moved in, and you see visual like representation of them hanging people in the streets. They've got a foothold in, and it's just like I don't understand how people can say there's no dark moments, there's no choice, and there's no impact. Because that once that happened, I was like, okay, you guys are going like for a story here. Like I was worried that hearing this, you guys were going to be a lot more tame. No, they went for the throne.
Well, I think a lot of what people mean when they say there's no choice, they get that wrong by saying no choice when what I think they're trying to imply is that their choice isn't
Mm,
represented as well. And I understand that because I agree to some effect where like what I would want to say might not always be there, or what I would want to do might not always be there. And I think when you look across the pond at something like a Baldur's Gate 3, you typically feel more represented in terms of your thought process equating to your created character's thought process. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I think that there's something to be there's some complaint to be had there. And I also think there's a complaint to be had with I, I feel like for 30 hours of this game, I was playing as Rook and I was he was somebody that I wasn't defining in its entirety. Like it felt like that was somebody. Same thing, talking about Hawk. Like it felt like that is someone already. And
Mm.
I'm not really getting to shape who that someone is or who that someone is becoming. That's who they are. And I'm getting to experience that story as if I was making dialogue decisions with Kratos. That's kind of how I felt. It's like I'm playing God of War, that's Kratos, but Kratos has a dialogue tree. And Kratos only has a very small spectrum of what Kratos is going to say, you
Yeah.
know? And it kind of felt like that to me, where I'm going to try to be funny. Okay. It's his brand of funny. I'm going to try to be an asshole. It's not all that mean. Like it doesn't feel like there's any real me in that character.
Yeah, it's the power of what a good writer is. And it shows that because you have games like Baldur's Gate where they can convey, even when you're choosing your dialogue options, they can summarize in one sentence and get it across 100% as to what's going to come out of the character's mouth. Whereas in Veilguard and stuff, when you're choosing certain decisions and dialogue, you're like you said, you're looking. The thing is, they put such emphasis on the pictures to choose what you're going to be doing, like the crying eye. Oh, that's going to be emotional, and then they give you like 4 words as to what that will be, and it's just very brief, and that's what I mean by restrictive of that whole patented dialogue wheel. So
Yeah.
it's it's something where I do think it's detrimental. I would love to see them go back to the CRPG roots, but I don't think they ever will. That's the thing. I
Can I
don't
ask
think they
you,
ever.
so would you rather, because there has to be a give and a take always.
Mhm.
There's just opportunity cost. There's only so much money for a budget. Would you rather have a combat system that is, would you say you think this is the best playing Dragon Age game ever?
Yeah, but it's not even comparable.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't even think it's almost not even in the realm of
From
close.
you, let me rephrase that actually. From you, the character, it is the strongest.
Oh,
From
okay.
having control over your companions as well, no, it's the worst.
Right.
So that's the 50-50. Like it has some of the strongest combat and yet the weakest combat at the same time because Dragon Age is meant to be party-based combat. And all you're doing is left trigger and then whatever thing for if you was able to jump between some other people, like you said, oh my God, S tier, S plus, S plus plus.
So let me ask you this. You think it's your favorite Dragon Age combat?
Yes.
Okay, mine too. Would you rather have a game where it is incredibly in depth with the options for how you communicate through dialogue decisions? Or would you rather have a continuation of this system in the next game where maybe you do have the ability to control those? Because like that's the thing. The next game is going to be an iteration of this. So is it going to be an iteration where you have a similar style of combat that's maybe a little bit worse, but more improved in the dialogue decisions and in just decision making in general? Or would you rather have the next game keep a similar style of dialogue to Veilguard, but you get to control all your characters in combat, swap between them, use their abilities in real time, and still keep the core foundation of this combat in DA5?
I've always been of the mind that I prefer story over combat. It's never, that's why I don't mind CRPGs. Like I sat there, like I love Pillars. Dude, this combat is dog shit in comparison to most of. You put that in the hands of every gamer, and there's probably going to be about 2% of people that are like, I like
Right,
this.
right.
The rest is just going to bounce off. Like, writing is so important to me. Companions, making it compelling, lore, world building, that is all that takes precedence. And it shows because I love Dragon Age more than Mass Effect, and Dragon Age combat before this always felt off. Like, even having control over all your parties, it never felt like it was at the top of its game. I don't think anybody can. If you're arguing that, I'm sorry. That like I know opinions are, subjective to the person, but that come on, let's be real. Like I enjoy it. There's a difference between enjoying it and saying that it's at the top that it could be. It
Right.
was never ever doing that. It did a job and it did it well, but they definitely would sideline it because they were focused on the story.
Right. Well, it's like I like Mass Effect 1's combat more than 2, but objectively Mass Effect 2's combat is better than 1. Like it's Mass Effect 1 is more RPGified, but
Mm.
like that's in a lot of ways what makes it worse. Whenever they went straight cover shooter and then just had a whole bunch of dialogue decisions and that was their methodology for still creating an RPG, it's like, yeah, that worked pretty well. Gears of War meets RPG. So, yeah, yeah, that works. Um, so you know that my favorite style of games are the Uncharted's and the Last of Us. Sony first party shit. Like I am a fanboy for that style of game, third person over the shoulder action adventure game. I'm not a, I don't think I would put myself in a Sony apologist group. I critique them quite frequently, and mainly because I think you could put me in that group in the PS4 generation because I was just being fed my favorite style of games nonstop. And now at this point, I'm like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Y'all ain't making my favorite style of games no more. But that's the thing is how I there's nothing like this. There's nothing like a God of War this year. There's nothing like a Horizon this year, an Uncharted or whatever. This kind of feels like, oh wow, Sony Santa Monica made an RPG. You know what I mean? And like so this to me is kind of the perfect evolution of what I want to see more from BioWare, where it's combining my two favorite things, Western role-playing games and action adventure games, third person over the shoulder. So like if they continue to iterate off of this foundation, holy smokes,
I mean,
man.
I'll throw it to you. You're you're red hot on the combat, right?
Red
So
hot.
if they literally just copy pasted it and they made no changes and just focused all the time on the writing,
Yes, do that. That's the answer.
because don't get me wrong, this combat again, it's not flawless. It has flaws, but I would so be okay with you just ripping that out, being like, okay, that's the foundation. This is our combat. This is what we build off of moving forward. We've had complaints about the writing and the story and stuff. Let's just go fully in on that and find our footing there because we've already found our footing in the combat. Let's find our footing in the writing. And this is it. Make it a trilogy. Like this is what you guys did so well is trilogies, building off of the past and getting better and better at it. Kind of wobbled with Mass Effect 3, but it's that's the thing. You struggle with concluding trilogies. At the beginning of Mass Effect 3, we were all invested and stuff.
Yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
I would I would take writing now because they've shown us that they can do combat.
Yeah. It's dude, I think that that's exactly if I could pick anything, that would be the route. Let's just keep the combat as good as it is right now. Let's don't go backwards, exactly how it is now, and don't even tinker with that shit. Just go full steam ahead on the writing. I think that is exactly the answer. That's yeah, that's fucking genius, dude. That should be the plan moving forward. To get these things out quicker as well, like you said, let's iterate. Look at Yakuza. Come on, guys. I know that you some of that shit wouldn't be tolerated for BioWare. They just don't have the goodwill that RGG does. Um, where if they reused a bunch of assets, didn't have new world environments, yada yada yada, like yeah, they would get crucified because the internet doesn't like Bioware. Right now at least. But if you build up that goodwill, then um, yeah, iteration.
Yeah,
I think that's the key.
it's the difference between strong foundations, isn't it? Because they built such a strong foundation of Kamurocho in the Yakuza games. What more could you do? All they did was they would add another city to explore, like Sotenbori or whatever it was called, and do a different one. So this is it's just the opposite flip of that. Like keep your combat because it's good. It feels good and just focus on the damn writing. That is it. Get that shit smoothed out.
Absolutely. Was there any what else what other direction did you want to go in? I have a few more notes wrote down that I'd like to dive into, but is there a direction you want to lean specifically to keep it more tailored?
What would be the things that are left? Because I've got the things I've left unticked so far that I'll probably dip a little bit more into is factions, locations,
Well,
and how
you
the exploration work.
yeah, you lead into it and then I'll just bounce off you.
So we touched on the factions with each of the companions being assigned one of them, and obviously you said it had that Mass Effect 2 moment and stuff. For me, what it began to feel like in these early things when you're building up the meter, it felt very Mass Effect free with the galactic readiness. And because I've not reached that point of where they're going to implement these things, but they wouldn't put them systems in the way they have if they're not going to implement them in like the final last push, hurrah, pull all your buddies in for the final fight. And I really did like that. I like that you're in each zone when you're questing, you're constantly leveling them up. And I also liked the merchant mechanic
Yeah,
of when you're
maxing out those
selling
stats.
crap. Crap doesn't just have gold worth; it has faction worth. You need to be mindful of who you're selling it to, because if you really like one faction, the beauty of it as well, dude, them load times
Yes.
so damn quick. It's not like, oh, I need to go to the Grey Wardens fast travel and then 3 minutes. Like it is instant. And that's something that kind of shocks me is how quick them load times are. But you can be like, all right, I'll bounce this merchant, keep keep feeding them up, and every time you do that, new level of stock unlocks, and that's incredible. Like
Well,
really, really cool.
and also, I mean, like, I so here's the thing. I got all of my factions to moderate except for one, which was, they remained weak, which I just couldn't find shit to do other than sell, rank up the merchant level and sell items. They didn't have a bunch of quests. And
Mm.
I was like, man, that's such a bummer because I wanted to get them all to like excellent rank before going into the final mission. Because, like you said, I was thinking, okay, this is going to have a pretty big impact on whatever takes place, and I couldn't get that one. I couldn't find really anything to do for that one specific faction, and so I was like, okay, well, I already have all the other ones at moderate at the very least, and I have a couple at excellent, so I'm just gonna go into the main
Which
mission.
which
The
faction out of curiosity?
Hall of Valor? Is that the that was the location, I believe. The
Yeah,
faction.
the they're like treasures, golden something,
Yes.
something along them
Yes.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, it's like a more beachy style setting if I'm recalling correctly.
Mm.
And I couldn't find anything to do. That's where you do the battle arena.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I that was so weird to me where I completed that and I didn't have a super high rank after
It's
doing it.
I didn't do this, but I'm fairly certain it's because they want you to keep doing it
I'll keep doing the
because you
battles.
you can keep going on after that. It doesn't just they don't just stop talking to you. You can go back and talk to her and be like, I want to fight again.
And you continue getting to
That's
rank
what I
up.
mean. I don't know, but that's what I imagine. Because
Okay.
when I did the 10 levels and then I was like, oh, she has a speech bubble. Maybe she'll like talk to me about something. And she was like, "You want to go back into the arena?" And I was like, "No, not really." Like, I've already
Okay.
completed your quest. I assume then if that's the only one that kind of really trailed behind, that would be that would be the thing. But that's rough.
That's kind of repetitive,
If
yeah.
yeah, if you're gonna make somebody do that to max out a thing, this did you max any of them out like
Yep.
fully?
Yes. I did the oh man, I'm horrible with names. Like a creepy underbelly. It's towards the bottom of the
The
map.
Morn Watch,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, where it's like the
Emmerich
merchant.
guy. He's like the ethereal spirit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. The merchant dude who has like the smoke pouring out of it. Like
yeah.
there's no real being there. It's just like smoke pouring out of his fucking trench coat thing. Uh yeah, man. The I maxed out them because theirs was just really easy. It was only a few questions. It was like max up. Okay. Okay, fine. Perfect.
Do you think maybe as well because you said you were beelining quests because I picked up so much crap.
You
Like
do
I
get
don't.
you level up from doing that too. Yep.
So every time you sell a piece of junk, it gives you the experience, and because I'm unearthing every single damn thing, like I've done. I did all of the Arlephane Forest thing, and they're very, very like up there. I assume more quests are going to become available the further I go into the game. I assume they get populated with a
So
few
you
more
already have them at
quests.
like moderate or so?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, then yeah, you're gonna breeze through. You'll probably have everyone at excellent without even trying, really.
Yeah. So
So I
that's
didn't I
what,
didn't know it was that important.
yeah. Important what the looting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ball out of control. And the beauty of it is as well when you're like going back and forth, sometimes when you return to areas, them like bags have respawned and stuff. So when I've like, oh, a new quest
Oh,
here, oh, I can like redo the things that don't respawn are the chests and then the little pots. I don't know if you remember they have like little tiny pots
yep.
and
You
stuff like
smash
that.
them.
Like the not the smashable ones, the ones that you do interact with and then they undo. They will always remain open and they don't thingy. But yeah, you can that's another thing. Smashing like crates, barrels, and everything, and they just shit out valuables.
Yeah.
All of the road when you're in Docktown and stuff, and they have shelving units full to the brim of stuff. You smash all that stuff, you come out nice and minted. So
Yeah.
that is what I've been doing, and just power leveling all of that shit. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a fun game talking about exploration. It's such a fun game to just kind of roam around because once again the movement is so strong that it's like you just kind of like running around and looking off at the distance, looking off at the sights and the vistas. Like there's amazing. And then we probably should talk about tonal artistic design, artistic direction, that type of thing. Because I think location design and location variety is among the best I've seen in an RPG once again in a long time. I hate to make these huge sweeping statements of the best location design ever. I don't think that per se, but like it's very, very good. It's up there for sure. It's some of the best BioWare's ever done for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna say, yeah. Especially what we need to keep in mind is a vanilla 1.0 release. So
right.
when people sit there thinking about, oh yeah, well Mass Effect 3 had this, or Mass Effect 2 had this, a lot of the best memories you have of that is DLC as well. You need to keep in mind, like the darkest moment in Mass Effect 2 is a DLC.
Yeah,
So
it's I I think there's a clear separation for me between my appreciation for the character design and my appreciation for the world design. I don't love the artistic direction for the character design as much as I do for the world design. And sometimes they're kind of at odds with one another, where I'm looking at these characters and I'm like, you look so fucking goofy, and this
oh my
world
God.
behind you in the backdrop is so beautiful.
I can't remember the exact name of the Darkspawn enemy, but they've made him look like the Crimson Chin. Like I audibly laughed when it was just like that made it through, and I get it. You you've adapted the Darkspawn in a way in the lore sense that you're changing them. So you wanted to have visual representation of that changing, but you could have gone with such better designs. Like the Darkspawn look very goofy. There's I can't defend that because I remember it going from they always kind of looked a little bit odd, but at least they looked menacing. Maybe it's because of the color and the tone and the limitations on Origins being a 360, like very close to the launch, like the the Hurlocks and stuff of Darkspawn. They looked menacing. Like you wouldn't want to meet that anything. Not to say I'd want to meet that Crimson Chin thing guy in a cave. I'd
Right.
probably laugh at least on the way to my grave. Like, Jesus, some goofy little guy with that big ass chin's gonna kill me. All right, could be worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that Mass Effect 5 is going with a more photorealistic approach to their art style. Which once again that's costly, but um and I do appreciate the fact that it's just not another fantasy game that looks like every other fantasy game. They did clearly try to differentiate themselves from everything else on the market, but I think there's kind of a problem where Hogwarts comes out the year before. You obviously don't know what art direction they're going for, and it ends up being a very, very similar art direction. And I hate that there's like some sort of clowning going on where people are like trying to roast Dragon Age by comparing it to Hogwarts. It's like, Hogwarts is fucking really good. Like I think artistically, sure. Once again, I don't love the character design, the whimsical nature of it, but fine character design, incredible world design. I think it's kind of the same exact problem, but it's not. I don't think it's roastable. Like it's almost like saying
It's
that Hogwarts is the lesser than, or something. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Best one of the best-selling games ever.
so what made me think is it's kind of the thing where they had dark themes in the original games that they would tackle. And I think what a lot of people were hoping is that you wouldn't go down the cartoon-esque route. They were hoping that it would adopt what like The Witcher did. Where The Witcher one, it looks goofy as shit. You go back and look at the stuff they had going there, and it's like, that's kind of goofy. The Witcher two kind of wobbled with some aspects, but it was a much bigger improvement. And then The Witcher three, they found their artistic footing, and it would be criminal if they went backwards for whatever Witcher game they're going to be good. Like that has to be the standard and improving upon that. The thing that I think they got caught up in is because that image is being shown to them, right? That we see the Tevinter. That's
Oh
so
yeah.
artistic. That's so artistic and specific. But the thing is that that only really works in Tevinter
Yes.
because of the factions and the way the city is presented. It seems like that was the very first thing that they designed, and they then pulled that design everywhere else in the game, which they shouldn't have done, in my opinion. They were so proud of it looking moody and stuff like that because it pops. Them character designs pop in that environment. They look goofy as shit in the Arlethane Forest when everything's all bright and whimsical.
Right.
And it's just like, what is going on here, guys? I think that's like a big misstep for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't think it's like some massive complaint or I don't think it's Fortnite looking
No,
characters or it's nothing silly like that. It's not even something
but
that
you can't have big butt women. Come on, guys, you can't compare it to Fortnite.
right. I by about 5 hours into the game, I'm not even really thinking about the character modeling all that much, other than, facial animations are a bit wonky. They're a bit off, as they have been in previous Bioware games. Lip syncs a little bit all over the place, depending on the character that's speaking. And
Mm,
you notice that?
yeah, the thing is, I don't think they've ever really done well in the lip syncing department. Like, it's
No.
something that they've just never gotten right, and it's always been very distracting. It's why I'm so glad I'm a subtitle like whore. Like I very rarely look at a character's face. I will pan up and look and be like, who's talking? Okay, and then I will read the dialogue more so than I actually listen. I don't know if that's weird, uncommon if other people do that.
No, it depends on the game for me. Like sometimes games don't have clear enough audio to where like I'll just look at the dialogue because I don't want to miss something. But this I do think they do a good job. I think every voice actor does a good job of being clear, being I think the audio design in terms of leveling and balancing is always appropriate. I don't think the music ever outweighs the conversation, the dialogue. I don't think the conversation outweighs the music. Like there's a good audio balancing job being done in Dragon Age of Veilguard. I do think that probably my biggest issue with the with just the tone in general is that there are moments where like you see I don't did you get to the pool of blood moment yet? I don't want to
It's the ossuary, right?
I'm
Or is that
horrible with
that it was
locations.
something? It was something blood. The opening where you pick up Lucanus,
Lady,
Path of Blood
was
or
there
some crap.
a lady in a pool of blood?
No,
Okay, I don't want to I'm not going to say anything more. I'll just say
mine was the underwater prison. That's what I was thinking.
I don't think that's the moment I'm talking about.
Okay.
But there's a moment where there's this fucking dope scene that is just like environmentally, artistically so uh, shocking, provocative. Like it is rated M like to the fullest. And you have those moments where, once again, you brought this up earlier, the disconnect between you can tell certain writers got a hold of certain shit. And the motherfucker that wrote that I want to see more of him, her, them in the next game because that person that wrote that scene and some of that shit just with Lucanus and Darwin in general, the writing for those two characters and some of the moments and some of the art design, like whoever was really like directing that, the direction for those moments, yeah. And that's the bummer where you see some of the other shit and it's so whimsical and childish and juvenile and it's like why is there such a divide here? And I know that you brought it up earlier where BioWare games are kind of silly. Pretty much all of them are kind of silly. Like there is sort of a juvenile young adult literature vibe to it, you know?
Mm. Yeah. The only outlier to that is it definitely felt. I think this is why it lands as most people's favorite, is because the stakes were so high in Mass Effect 2, and the companions that they shook the game up with had such dark pasts. The majority of them, you had Miranda. She didn't have a nice background. Jack didn't have a nice background. Jacob didn't have a nice background. Like these are all tragic characters, and even the returning characters, they were struggling with your disappearance. So everything was very dark and dour. So that's kind of what we need. If you're gonna go down the dark route, you need that across the tone, and maybe redesign the enemies moving forward. Maybe give it another crack. Maybe shake it up because the thing is as well, it's okay to make a mistake because they've shaken them up multiple times throughout the series. It's not like they've remained consistent and now is the first time. I remember people were complaining about them changing the look of the Darkspawn from Origins to 2, saying they looked goofy. So it's definitely something that they can change.
Well, Dragon Age has never really found out what tone it's trying to capture either. Like Dragon Age 1 and 2 are similar tonally to some degree, and then Inquisition is quite a bit different. But even combat design wise, 1 is totally different from 2. 2 is quite a bit
Mm.
different from Inquisition. Veilguard's totally different from all of them. So like they are constantly trying to figure out what Dragon Age is. And I think that this is just another example of them trying to figure out what it is. And it's even an example within an example where there's multiple examples inside this one game of them trying to figure out what it is because they're we're talking about ultra dark moments, unbelievably juvenile, high school diary style bullshit as
Yeah.
well. Which I don't like that stuff, but you see that Persona 5 is one of the best-selling RPGs of all time. Um, I, that's probably a little bit overblown. It's sold really fucking well. I think it's like around 10 million copies sold.
Modern day, it's done extremely well.
Right. And it's entirely that. It's entirely based around that sort of brand or that sort of tone. And
Mm.
it's like, so yeah, you look at that and you're like, well, maybe we should probably capture a little bit of that, a little bit of The Witcher, because once again, it constantly feels like Dragon Age is trying to look at what others are doing and implement that opposed to doing what they want to do. Like it doesn't seem like they're ever the ones who are, except for Origins, it doesn't seem like they're ever the ones who are leading the charge in the innovative realm of RPGs. It seems like they're plucking elements from other RPGs and incorporating that into Dragon Age. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, because a lot of it as well, the more darker things I've noticed, and well, not even just darker thing, like the connecting threads between the games, they've kind of stumbled because I can't remember where I was going to mention it. It's probably towards the start, which I should have gone with, is they they did one of my biggest complaints again of you're kicking off a story. If people didn't play Trespasser, they're probably looking at, and didn't interact with any of the trailers and didn't know enough. They're like, why the hell is Solus doing this in the beginning? Like, there's an expectation that you had to play the DLC. And they did the same thing in Inquisition, why they didn't really delve too deep into Corypheus until much, much later, is because he was introduced in Dragon Age 2's DLC already. So you can't keep relying on that. And that's also probably a good thing as to them not doing DLC for Veilguard. That will allow them to have everybody be on the same damn page for the most part, other than choices, and you can build off of that. Um, so really hope that they fix that.
I think that I want to do a couple things before we hop out of here. I want to ask you, first off, I will say when I said that they aren't really the innovators, I will give them a little bit of credit. I think you do look at Witcher for inspiration for the combat system. You do look at God of War for the inspiration for the combat system, whatever, Final Fantasy VII remake. But I don't think that this combat, in my opinion, is better than The Witcher 3. I think it's the
Ooh.
for me, I think it is. For me, I think it's the best combat in melee combat I've probably ever played in this style of role playing game, where you
Mm,
get to make choices and have that reflected in that matter. And like I don't think I've ever played this style of Western role playing game with where the combat's this good. So I will give them credit for looking to the action adventure space and plucking out a God of War and a Final Fantasy or Final Fantasy is a JRPG, but plucking out a God of War and looking at how other action adventure games move and play and feel and how just moment to moment feels in a good action adventure game and sort of integrating that into an RPG. I don't feel like that blend has ever crossed so seamlessly, so well, and felt so good to play until Veilguard. I think The Witcher 3 would probably be the only other somewhat close comparison, but I think this combat is way more flexible and fun than The Witcher 3, in my opinion.
to get in another combat bit.
Always got to go back to combat.
Um, I in my previous point, I was meant to mention about the law notes. That's what I was trying to like. My brain was like, you're meant to bring something up, and I was
I just wrote down let Loon lore dive.
um. So with the thing that I was having problems with of them locking it behind DLCs as well. for Solus, a lot of his nuanced character development is now tucked in notes on top of that. So you've gone and kicked his story off down this road in a DLC, and then people are booting this up wanting to know answers. Yet very, very little. Maybe they really expand that open in the later half of the game and stuff like that. But a lot of when you're going in the crossroads and you're picking up notes and you're doing the memory segment, a lot of this is optional stuff. And the memory segments is a little bit more forgivable because that's actual content that people will probably be more poised to engage with rather than reading text. A lot because I know a lot of people when they all they care about is if it gives you XP or not. They're not reading what's on that note. They just go click, okay, it didn't give me, and then back off because they just want to get back to the combat. They want to keep the pace up. So that's kind of a negative that they've relied so heavily on that. Um,
Yeah. What do you,
Overall, though,
yeah.
the lore, I feel like they've respected it enough.
Could you dive into that a little bit, like in terms of what you appreciate about the lore being respected or new elements that were introduced here that tie things together or anything like that?
So what I touched on with like the griffins and stuff, like that's such a cool thing, and I think that it's great that they brought that back to the forefront because that poises them to really show the strength of the Grey Wardens moving forward. They they show just how volatile even more the Kunari are in this game because we they flirted with that idea in Dragon Age 2. You felt the menace of when they were in that city, and that technically they weren't in charge of it, but they were in charge of it. They backed every other faction into the corner, and they had such a menacing presence. And they've progressed that story down the road a little bit more and shown that okay, they are very strong, but they're also very fragile because the coon is eating itself alive in parts, and that's what the Untum, I think is the name of the faction in this game, where they've broken off and they are just these these mercenaries per se, just working for their own ambitions and stuff. Um, a few bits which um I've seen some lore notes with Tash. Sorry to go back to that, and it does feel a little bit like if you've not dived deep into the lore of Dragon Age, it probably feels a lot more intrusive than people genuinely realize. Because what I was going to do is I was going to send you a link as well to put in the description if people wanted to check it out, and it is of a YouTuber called Gildefarlem, and she goes into painstaking amounts of detail in Dragon Age. Like, I'm a surface lore enjoyer compared to her. She is like the master lore keeper, as it were. And this is what I mean by it's not people saying that the sexuality and all this stuff is intrusive. She covered that video 7 years ago. So around about Inquisition on a book that was published before Inquisition. It's always been a core part of the game that basically any faction, any person, there's no stated rules. There's no like the thing that's set in stone is if you're royalty, more so than anything. Play your role in royalty, and then even then it states in the law that once they've sired like an heir or something, they can do whatever they want. It's just a role for them to fulfill, and then they can go and do whatever they please and stuff like that. So try not to get too upset about them law notes because it's not something that they've just pulled out of the ether as a brand new thing. It's just a continuation because as much as people have voiced their dislike about injecting politics and agendas and mindsets into gaming, I get that. You want your escapism. I'm sorry, Dragon Age isn't that
No
series
Bioware
because they've
game ever
done it.
has been.
That's what also I was going to say as well, is that especially Dragon Age in particular, that's been there since day dot.
Yeah.
And they've even self-reflected on it in the past to try and be a little bit more mindful on how they approach it. So, yeah, and that was with David Guida, who people they're saying all these new writers have ruined it, but that's the head honcho who wrote the fucking law. Like he went and rewrote stuff and tackled it from a different angle because that was the whole inception, is that Dragon Age is meant to mimic a lot of what is going on in the world, and he wanted it to build and become an evolving entity. He didn't want to just put these things in the lore and have them set in stone. That's it. The Lord of the Rings kind of stuff of like that is what I say is lore, that is it. Like there's flexibility to these things.
I so yeah, and then we already covered this. I think that because you look at something like Metaphor, I think is actually a really good example
Hmm.
where Metaphor covers a lot of similar topics, covers a lot of similar ground. I think Metaphor is just so much more nuanced in their character development and in the way that I listen, I would rather play Dragon Age of Veilguard 100 times out of 100 over Metaphor. I just but that's once again moment to moment feel
It's
combat
your
like
preference. That's what people need to understand. That you shouldn't have to defend this. That is just your preference. It's
right,
Skill Up did a video where he did obviously his review, and he was pretty harsh on it. Is the word I'll use, and very critical, which is that's his job.
totally.
He did a follow-up thing where he pulled two other content creators or reviewers. I don't know who they were, but they were much more Bioware and
Oh,
Dragon Age lovers.
on the podcast, Lucy James
Yeah.
and Paul Tassi. Yeah, I watched that.
And it made me have such an infinite amount of more respect for him because it's like he stood by his ground. That's his opinions and his thoughts. He didn't like many aspects of it, but
Totally.
he's not saying that his word is law. He's giving these people a platform to voice that no, there is a different perspective.
100%. Yeah, I
And
respect that so
that
much.
was yeah, perfect.
And then I respect, his opinion, anyone's opinion that is negative on the game. I mean,
Yep.
my opinion on the game is not 100% positive, not even close to 100% positive.
Mhm.
And I think that that's, I guess, where we can lead it. Was there anything else you wanted to hit on?
There is one thing, and
Roll
it
through it, brother. We're good.
it's it made me chuckle. I think I sent you the pictures. Um, Dragon Age isn't the only game that I dive deep into, like reading lore notes and everything. It's one of the big, big, big reasons I love Remedy because they put a heavy emphasis on it. And I stumbled in the catacombs on a note that is basically paying homage to Control, and it was basically rewording what a note Casper Darling had left in Control, and basically being playful with it, and it made me smile because it's always great when you see that just shows human feeling of like it's a developer, but they're clearly a fan of another game. That's a developer that plays games. It's not just a job for them. They've put that in there because they're like, oh, that would be a funny little thing for
I
someone
may,
to round the corner and discover. And to a lot of people, they will read that and be like, what the fuck is this going on about? Whereas me, it clicked. I was like, that's very similar. What the
yeah,
hell? And I went back and I was like, that is like, yeah, no, that is. That's amazing.
that's awesome. I'll make sure to add the clips in here so that the people can see it. Anything else you want to lore dive into? Feel free, brother.
Um, I think I'll ease off of it.
No, you good.
I think we dived very, very deep. I guess it was very having Tevinter in the game for the first time was amazing. Like having such an important area be described in all them previous games in notes and hearing about how different it is and how much more strict it is in certain aspects and the design and stuff. And they really did, they nailed the architecture. and the feel, because that opening sequence is so cool. The lighting, the setting, the mood, they set it up really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
I I want to I have one thing I want to ask you before we hop out of here. Um, do you have any is there any other points you wanted to cover before we bounce off of this?
nope, I hope it's not some really random curveball there.
No,
You'd be like, who
it's
is this guy in 1155
uh
Dragon or something? Like,
no,
what did
no,
he
no,
do?
no,
And it's
no.
like,
No,
baked eggs.
I got about the simplest question I could possibly ask you, and it's I think it's the way to close off any of these review discussions. I know you still haven't finished it yet, and obviously we'll come back to the end of the month when we do our rankings, and we'll let you put your final stamp on the game. And I might play a little bit more before the end of the month as well. But I have finished it. The main story is completed. All the companion quests are completed. A good chunk of the faction quests are completed. I want to grade this thing. I'll give it my stamp right now of what I would give it, what grade I would rank it at, and I'll let you give your what 35 hours in?
My early impressions.
Yeah, 35 hours early impressions. So I'll kick it to you first. On a scale of 1 to 10.
One being the lowest, 10 being the highest, I take it.
Yep, yep. You can use decimal
Mm.
points, however you're feeling 35 hours into the game.
Everything I've been given so far, lore, story, characters, locations, everything. These opening initial impressions, I would say 8.5.
Yeah. That's right about where I'm thinking as well. I
I will
so
hold I will hold my thing. If there is no deep roads, that goes down to 7. I'm sorry, and they need to climb up back to 8 with other things in other areas because that's criminal.
so here's the interesting thing. I feel similar. I feel like 8.5 is probably somewhere I'd be comfortable with as well. I have a lot of complaints with the story. I also have a lot of high moments with the story. It's a very inconsistent game narratively. It's a very consistent game combat, just moment to moment feel. Like it this thing needs a demo because it's a super strong opening. You know, your first, if you gave people a 2 hour demo, I think a lot of people would be like, yo, the internet's crazy. I'm gonna jump into this. It's got some cool shit going on. Like it's just a fun game to play. And I still feel very strongly that it's just a fun game to play. But man, there are story moments that I I was like, man, this there's such a disconnect between the best of the best story beats and the worst of the worst. Like it's such a drop off, and it feels so much less consistent than any other Bioware game I've ever played, even Andromeda. From a narrative standpoint, I'm not saying it's overall worse than Andromeda per se. Narratively, I think main quest line wise, it's way better than Andromeda. Um, but I think Andromeda has some cool companion. Anyways, not comparing it to Andromeda. It's a better game than Andromeda. But I am gonna go I'm gonna go 8.2, my overall grade
I'll be
for
honest, that's higher than I thought you were gonna give it. I thought it was gonna be an 8, 8.1 to be honest.
yeah, I could even see it slipping down into a high 7, depending on the mood. Like if I came in here if I would the ending is so strong. So I'm coming off of a really strong ending. Um But I think that's the thing where with Dragon's Dogma 2, I would give that somewhere in that similar range for a score. You know what I mean? It's one of those years where there are games like Dragon's Dogma 2 has some of the I like Dragon's Dogma 2 combat more than Dragon Age for sure, the Veilguard for sure. But Dragon Age stories, even the lowest of the lows, are better than the highest of the highs of Dragon's Dogma 2. Like there's no story to be spoken of there, barely. Um, so it's one of those weird years where like I'm in this spot talking about an 8.2 and being like, yeah, that might be my game of the year, might be in my top 5 games of the year. It's a really weird year for me where I don't know if I have a single 9 this year.
Oh, damn. See, for me, I definitely have nines, or at least they. No, I have nines. I have nines. I don't know why I even thought about hesitating for that. I think a lot of people get caught up in because everybody's able to voice their opinion so easily. Everybody's able to put the critic hat on. So in years past, there were some people that genuinely were like, "Yeah, man, Dragon Age Inquisition, that is my game of the year," and they had no shame and they had no worry about voicing that as like an opinion and stuff. But as people have been exposed more and more to this critic culture on the internet, with people seeing so many reviewers and stuff and showing, instead of it just being a text that you're reading on the screen, it's a lot more human now as well, a lot more opinionated, a lot more video back and forth. Um, so you see a lot of people hesitate, like you have done there, where you're like, you shouldn't have to feel that. If you've enjoyed it that much, that should, if you know that makes your final, 5, 6 cut. That that's how it should be.
No, what I'm saying is like I feel like it's just kind of a weak year for me personally, where
Oh damn, really?
yeah, where like an 8.2 could be my game of the year. Like I don't know if
Uh,
I've ever had a game that wasn't a 9 as my game of the year. Or a 9 for me personally, where it's like something I could confidently say, okay, 2023, I would easily put a 9 on Jedi Survivor. 2022, I would easily put a 9 on Hogwarts on Horizon Forbidden
yeah,
West. You know what I mean?
that's fair enough.
2021, I'd easily put a 9 on Lost Judgment. Like this is a year where I'm like I I don't know if I have a single 9 that I would give a game this year.
Okay, well, I'll just reflect my my viewpoint of that and where my mind was heading. This isn't a 9 for me, but as a Dragon Age fan, if, if I was to be asked what my top six personal, from feelings, enjoyment, and everything, it probably would make that final top six cut. It may even muscle out something that is better from a mechanics point, from a story point, and stuff like that, because it's Dragon Age, man. It's a new entry in a series I love, and that's what being a fan is that you make
Absolutely.
irrational decisions and you support really stupid shit.
Well, here's the thing as well. When we do our rankings, that's a whole lot different than a grade. You know what I mean? Like whenever I'm looking at, sometimes I will say with the S tier, I get a little bit particular where I'm like, if I wouldn't give it a 9.5, I don't think it belongs in it. And that is kind of stupid. I'm not really as strict with the A and B. So like I'll give like if we were talking about this in a tier ranking amongst other games, you know what I mean? When we're ranking it amongst other games that we played, and say we had uh what's a fucking game we've played recently, Lone, that's like somewhat okay.
Alan Wake,
That's
Alan
a
Wake
great
2.
game.
Oh,
What's like an
somewhat.
okay game?
Uh,
How about we were
Star Wars
talking.
Outlaws.
I like Star Wars. I might like Star
Oh
Wars Outlaws
God,
more than this.
I'll concede Space Marine then, even though I think it's fucking amazing. But that's me being a fan. If I was objectively very, very critical of it, well, we can go with that, I suppose.
Let's talk Mortal Kombat 1. Mortal Kombat 1 I would put in the B tier. And then I would end up putting Dragon Age the Veilguard in the A tier, comparatively speaking. Like I like Dragon Age the Veilguard a tier above Mortal Kombat 1. But it's not like in my mind I'm going, okay, well, Mortal Kombat 1, I think though I would give that an 8.1 and Dragon Age. Like, it's not really that thing. Um, so so it's going to be interesting to when we get back to the ranking. I'm going to ask you two things. I'm going to ask you because by the end of the month, you'll probably be fucking 60 hours deep, if not more, into that bad boy. And so by the end of the month, I'm going to ask you. I'm
Still
going to
reading the same damn notes and driving myself into. I think I read this one. I'm going in circles.
right. And so at the end of the month, I'm going to ask you to rank it in your tier, but I'm also going to ask you what your grade would be. And so I think that's going to be the fun thing of looking at the discrepancy between a ranking based system and a grade based system as well. Not that
Well,
any of that fucking matters
and
to
has
anybody but
my
us.
has my grade changed? So I assume you
Exactly.
wrote what I said down, right?
Yep,
8.5, I believe.
8.5. I got you wrote down, and I got me at 8.2. So if I end up changing my opinion on it as well,
I'll
I'll
come
let
back
you
and I'll
know.
be like, it's a 6.4. The series is ruined.
Dude, well, that has been a fun ass Dragon Age Veilguard deep dive discussion. And also, kind of got to give ourselves a little pat on the back to make it through almost close to 3 hour conversation without really diving into any spoilers. Maybe a mild spoiler here and there that I'll try to timestamp. But not many spoilers at all in this conversation.
No, no, none that would, heavily impact a person's playthrough, n names and stuff. It's what I mean. It's a very murky water when you discuss what is a spoiler for some people. Some people want entirely blind,
Yep.
but at the same time, don't click on the video for the
Right.
topic.
Yeah, there's no way to
So,
have a 3 hour
yeah,
conversation and not talk
I'd,
about
i
details.
I hope that we did it justice.
I think so. I think so. If there's anything else you'd want to hit off before we get out of here, Loon, I think that's pretty much the wrap up to the Dragon Age Veilguard review so far.
No, just obviously have fun and give it a go. That's especially like because I don't think they have as lenient of like a refund policy on PlayStation and Xbox. Like
No.
if you're on PC, just do the Steam thing.
Well,
Like
dude, just
there's
put out a
no.
fucking demo, Bioware. EA, put out a demo.
I think they're a bit hesitant of that because they
Why?
did that with Andromeda, and that's a big reason as to because the opening of Andromeda was dog. They gave
No.
people 48-hour access or whatever it was, 72-hour access, and it got absolutely shredded by the internet, and that really caused sales to decline. But to the opposite pendulum of that, guys, this is like one of the strongest openings, like cinematically and stuff. Like you should have faith in your product. You as developers should have been like, yeah, this is something that you would put 72 hours, 48 hours access out and be like, here you go, here's a demo. You get like a 2 hour window before you want to purchase it and stuff like that. And it's just, I think it would have done the game a lot more justice.
Yeah, and then not to open up a whole new bag of worms, but cinematic presentation isn't something we really touched on, and I think that's definitely the best BioWare presentation from a cinematic standpoint that we've ever seen. Like, there's some crazy cutscenes later on in this game.
Mm,
So
absolutely.
that is it. Dragon Age, The Veilguard, BioWare. Hopefully, man, Mass Effect 5 comes out in a solid state. I know you're a Dragon Age lover. I'm a Mass Effect lover. I appreciate Dragon Age, but good Lord, let's
I
just
mean,
get
to
to
be
Mass
fair,
Effect.
I'm it's so close. Like, you could probably ask me on particular days, and if I'm feeling in a more sci-fi mood, it probably would edge it.
Yeah,
But
I'm always leaning more sci-fi. I don't like fantasy all that
yeah,
much at all, which once again factors in majorly to this whole equation.
because I've dived deep into Mass Effect's lore as well, really, really deep. Like they have really compelling lore. Just play the game, guys.
Dude, I hope they put out a demo for y'all to go out and check out because I do think that you get a 2 hour slice of that game. I think most people are like, oh, this is really really damn solid. Um, cool game, fun game. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Dragon Age the Veilguard. And if this video does well, this is our first time really experimenting with this format of a super deep dive review. Um, if the video does well and you'd like to see more of this, let us know and we'll dive into some more video games. Maybe even do
Mm.
like a fucking backlog book club once a year where we pick a game that's on both of our backlog or something and we dive into it and discuss it. So let us know if you like this format here and we'll try to hit more of these more often. We could have done this on Alan Wake 2. We could have done this on quite a few games because we play a lot of similar games at similar time periods. um
Yep.
Upcoming, maybe we could dive into an Indiana Jones or some show. Yeah, you guys let us know if the video does well. We'll take the cue and be like, hey, let's do more of this. So
Absolutely.
we try to respond as best as we can to the internet. We are uh puppets. You are the puppet master. And shout out to Metallica. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we shall see you soon. Goodbye.
See you later.